Call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Board of Selectmen, Tuesday, March 19th. Please note that this meeting is being telecast by Area 58, Community Access Media, Channel 15. We have openings on several committees. Please refer to the Board of Selectmen page on the town website for a listing and applications. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the community prayer from Selectman Townsend.
Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Okay, now we reach the portion of the meeting that is reserved to allow Carver citizens the opportunity to address the board. We limit this time to 10 minutes, and we ask citizens to try to speak for no more than 3 minutes themselves in order to give other citizens the opportunity to speak. Was there anybody that wanted to address the board this evening? Yes, ma'am. Please grab a seat and just give us your name and address, please.
Jennifer Dowding, 39 William Street. Thank you for hearing me, Chairman Clark and fellow selectmen, women. I just wanted to put my opinion forth for the school committee's decision to up the school budget. I believe that it's really bad to cut art in half. I have a first grader and a second grader that want to go to CMHS, and I don't, it's just really difficult to see programs cut, and I don't want to sit here in another 2 years trying to save music or another art program. I understand that the state, we went and met at the State House for the fiscal year 2018 budget. A bunch of you guys went up there. We had to declare it wasn't an open meeting. And school committee members went, we went, town administrator went, and the DOR representative stated that by the formula that the state of Massachusetts uses, they pay too much to Carver. And people school choice out of Carver because we cut programs. And when we school choice out of Carver, the money that the state gives us for the school goes to another town. Mm-hmm. And I know you all know that. I don't know if all the voters know that. So I think that we need to grow our programs because a state formula a change happened before my kids get to high school is not gonna happen. And I don't wanna see any more programs cut in Carver. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to address the board? Okay. We'll move on. We have a request for an appointment to the Conservation Commission. Peg Blackwell and Daniel Badger. Is either of them here this evening? Mr. Badger, you want to step forward, please?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I have a question for the town administrator. It was brought to my attention that they only have one opening right now on the on that particular board, on the Conservation Commission.
Yes, we have one opening for full membership, but we do have one opening for an alternate.
Okay, so this is the alternate then?
Well, no, we have one. Mm-hmm. One, you can appoint two people tonight.
Right.
One will be a full-time.
And one will be the alternate?
Alternate, yes.
Okay.
Point of information, I'm not familiar with the bylaw that says the Conservation Commission has an alternate position. I think it's 5 members. I don't think there's an alternate on the conservation.
It's associate, sorry, associate member.
All right, so, Mr. Badger, you've applied for the position on the Conservation Commission. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving?
Sure. Dan Badger, 165 Plymouth Street. My interest in the Conservation Commission has multiple facets. Vocationally, I've been a professional guide and outdoor educator for more than 2 decades around the country and around the world. And so in terms of appreciating our environment, that's something that is now has always been a lifestyle of mine, going back to having a father who was an outward bound instructor to, growing up, caring about, sharing the joy of the outdoors with others. From a more practical standpoint, I've also been a grant writer and executive for a couple companies that focused on water filtration as it pertained to both environmental cleanup projects in Maine and in Massachusetts, and finding ways of reducing carbon footprint for both towns and homes as well. Some of those projects had to do with mitigating drinking water. Some of those had to do with processing actual sewer waste and finding alternative and less expensive ways of doing those types of projects for towns. Some examples, I was involved with a project in Weston, Massachusetts, where we took downtown sewage water and converted a greenhouse into a synthetic marsh, where we actually processed downtown wastewater into actual drinking water at the end. And so those types of projects I find exciting and fulfilling, but also things to share with communities where I've been living. Other aspects of things that I find important for conservation is getting involved with different communities and organizations and helping them maybe augment the good things that they're already doing and finding ways that I can serve, and also knowing when to stay out of their way if they're already doing good things. One of which I'm currently a vice president of Friends of Miles Standish. Taking care of the ecosystem in our own backyard is very important to me. Having 2 children and a family and a home in this town, I decided to limit my travels and start focusing my efforts on my own town and my own backyard. So that's, in essence, why I thought that the Conservation Commission might be a nice match for a place where I might be of service, might be of use, and also I'm also an expert at knowing what I don't know. So I'm certainly open to learning more about what's involved with what the town wants. What our wish list as a town for improving our environment, our ways that we could follow more of a leave no trace methodology for how we go about our activities, both in expanding and also maybe bringing some beautiful forests that we have in this town back to life again, and maybe mitigating waste and things like that. So. But again, I'm just looking for an opportunity to serve my town and focus on that. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board?
No.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the board has 2 applications before them, Mr. Badger and Peg Blackwell. Does someone want to make a nomination to fill the full-time position as opposed to the associate position?
I make a motion, we go ahead and appoint Mr. Badger for the commission position,
The full-time
I'll
position.
second,
full-time.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would someone like to appoint Peg Blackwell to the associate position?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Mr. Badger.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for applying.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, Chapter 61A request for intended conversion of use as a large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic installation, the Silva Family Nominee Trust 72 Center Street, map 70, lots 1 and 1 through 5.
1-5.
1-5, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm in a butter to this property, so I'm going to recuse myself. from the
Excellent,
discussion.
thank you very much. Would the folks representing this please step forward? If they are here? If they are not?
Were they made aware that this was going to be on the agenda?
They were by their lawyer, yes.
Mr. Town Administrator, do you have any knowledge to bring us up to speed on this?
Mr. Chairman, before the town administrator goes through all this paperwork to go ahead and explain it to us, it's my feeling that if they're not here, then we should be tabling this. Generally, we don't have a problem with it, but, you know, my feeling is if somebody wants something, they should be here before us. So I'm going to make a motion that we table this.
Point of information, it's on the agenda for 7:15, and it's 7:12. I know it's,
Will be coming.
All right, well, how about then if you amend it to say that if they do appear prior to 7:15, that we
So
will
amended.
remove the table?
So amended.
Was there a second to that motion?
I could second that.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Oh, we have discussion.
Just. Oh, thank you, Dave. Little robotics there. I just wanted to point out that I think this has been on the agenda several times in a row.
Has it?
I seen
Just last time.
just one time before. Okay.
Why was it tabled last time? I honestly don't
I think
remember.
the lawyer could make it, and he couldn't make it this time. He was gonna contact the family to have them represent themselves.
Okay, yeah, well, I just, I hate to table something if they're in a rush, but,
No,
If they're in a rush, they should be here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem, this, when it finally, when they finally get someone addresses it, from what I've been able to see so far. But, again, if you want something bad enough, you should be here or have a
or at
representative
least
here.
communicate
Yeah,
the circumstances. Well, at least, but again, it's for the board to decide.
I mean, they did
I spoke
communicate.
to the lawyer. The lawyer said he would notify the family and have them be here
Tonight.
tonight.
at 7:15.
All right, well, I got 7:13, so again, so the motion is that we're tabling it unless the
The
applicants appear
representative.
by 7, within 2 minutes. Is there, and I suppose if they showed up at 7:20, we could actually,
I think we should.
take it into consideration, but at any rate, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. I will ask the chair of the Finance Committee to call their meeting to order.
good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the Finance Committee joint meeting to order on March 19th, 2019. If you'll indulge me for a moment, on the end, we have Bill Duggan, George Callahan, our newest member, Beth Sulger, my vice chair, Kate Banzel, and I'm Alan Germain. Good evening.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to, as we did at our last meeting, run through the financial articles of the town warrant. We won't be really looking at the non-finance articles tonight. We'll be looking at those at our next meeting on the 5th. And then we will have, look at the warrant, discussion and vote on finance-related articles that are to be recommended by the Finance Committee for adoption. And then also, the Finance Committee is going to propose a stipend change for the Board of Selectmen and Conservation Commission.
That's correct.
So, let us start with, I guess, sorry, Mr. Town Administrator?
I'd move 4,
Pardon me?
Article 4.
You want to move to Article 4? All right, please, everyone, turn to Article 4.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. We're not going to take up the CPC, which is a financial one?
The Finance Committee didn't vote on that. I think maybe after the Finance Committee's done, then you can come back and look at that one later tonight.
Okay, can I go ahead and make a comment about it, though?
Absolutely.
The impression I got that we were gonna have 4 separate articles, not a B, C, D situation, that's on this one, because I can envision quite a bit of discussion, and I'd rather not get into a big discussion if we can avoid it, of just breaking the silly thing down.
As I understood it, because I asked about that myself, is that we will vote on each individually, so we'll be, it was explained to me, we'd be voting on Article 2A, then Article 2B, then Article 2C, and then Article 2D. So the
Okay.
intent is to vote on them individually.
That is correct. That is how the CPC wrote this article in the framework that's here, and each one of those would be voted individually, even though
Yeah,
they
as a matter of
say
fact, the
A-
last paragraph, the last sentence reading it, going into the, it says the following 4 items will be voted and managed individually as detailed in Appendix 20 in amounts not to exceed the following.
Yep. I just want to make sure it's perfectly clear to everybody that's watching because of our great Nielsen ratings.
By the way, just as we get started here, in one of our more momentous discussions, we were debating the various relative merits of relative thereto and related thereto. Town council tells us they mean the same thing. However, since traditionally we've always said relative thereto, I'd like to suggest that when we get the final version of the warrant, that all references to related thereto are changed to relative thereto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was one of my concerns. And I really concur about keeping these Community Preservation Act Committee articles separate because they're very different
Yeah.
items.
Well, and again, it's the way they're written, so it's intended to be that way.
Good.
Okay, on to Article 4, which is a supplemental appropriations for fiscal 2019.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could have everyone in their packet for Article 4, and this was voted by the Finance Committee.
Excuse me, are those extra copies up here, Elaine? We probably don't have enough for everyone, but we do have extra copies of the warrant if there's anybody that would like to have a copy.
And, Mr. Chair, since this version differs from the original draft, could we make it clear to people what Article 4 actually is? Because it's no longer the allocation of funds from fiscal.
Yeah, I just read supplemental appropriations for fiscal 2019.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is for one of our enterprise funds, the Cranberry Village Enterprise Fund, that is for the water system down there. We have an updated estimate for the rest of the year from our O&M department, and the correct number should be $15,745.
15745?
That is correct. Now, keep in mind, the retained earnings is in essence the savings account for the enterprise fund, and the bulk of this money is to replace the pump controllers and chemicals that are necessary to upgrade the well pump that's in there. Currently, this fund does have in the retained earnings some significant surplus. What's it make, well over 100?
Yeah.
It's well over $100,000, and again, it's taking money out of their savings to fund this capital cost for this project. This is the only supplemental appropriations we have for 2019. I think if many recall, years ago, this would have been 1 or 2 pages long, trying to balance the budget, but our financial system is working well, and again, this is from an enterprise fund, not our operating budget. But this is the only item that we anticipate this year that will need supplemental appropriations. In essence, this is our special town meeting article within the annual town meeting article.
By the way, I should note that we have our Finance Director, Meg LeMay, with us this evening. As we go through these, what I'm probably going to do after they're explained is ask the Finance Committee if they've had a chance to review the article and have taken any action, and then have general discussion, then the Board of Selectmen will vote. So on this particular article, has the FinCom weighed in?
We did, and our vote was 5-0 to accept it as written. Michael explained it thoroughly. It was a pretty easy explanation, and it went kind of quick, so we're all set.
All right.
We only had, I'm sorry, we only had 5 members of the board tonight. So when I say 5-0, that would make it unanimous tonight. We had 1 member miss the meeting, so.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen?
I make a motion to approve.
Yes.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Seems straightforward.
Being none? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Next article is Article 5, the allocation of funds from fiscal 2019 free cash.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start off this conversation by asking Superintendent Neef to come up and maybe James come up too. And I'm going to take the first stab at this, and Scott, please fill in any piece. At the direction of Chairman O'Brien, he asked the superintendent and I to meet last week, and explore opportunities to help the school committee address its $41,000 issue to maintain a full-time art teacher from going to a half-time position. With that, after a long discussion, which also included our financial team, what the superintendent and I have proposed is as written in front of you, which is items A, B, and C. And I'm going to really focus on item C. Item C is to fund this year the field maintenance and supply costs. These are supplies that are necessary to maintain our athletic fields that are currently were budgeted in the school budget for maintaining the school athletic fields. I think, as we all know, we've combined our O&M department for town and school, and we felt that the best way to kind of solve the issue at hand was to kind of remove that expense from the school budget, put that into free cash this year. Next year, we'll look at doing it through capital or other means, because it will be a reoccurring expense. And then that gives the chairman of the school committee the opportunity to then vote at their next meeting to reallocate that $41,000 that was in their maintenance budget, to then move that to their art teacher budget and maintain that teacher that was there. So that is what we had proposed, which is item number C. In order to fund that and maintain the free cash amount that we had is $1.29 million, what we did is we removed $21,000 from item A and $20,000 from item B. That gave us the $41,000. So item C is the new item that is in this version that you haven't seen in past versions of the warrant. But it's with the superintendent and myself and the finance team trying to come to a resolution that we felt would benefit both sides. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
I don't really have anything additional. I mean, that's a fairly good summary in terms of this gives the school district the opportunity to fully fund the art teacher and not reduce that position to a half-time position, which was my goal. So I did reach out to the town administrator and say, what can we do to try to come to a resolution to maintain that position and not have it be reduced? We did talk through this, and this was a solution that I would support as the superintendent in terms of freeing up that money and making it available to support maintaining that position, which the school committee obviously voted for and feels is vital in terms of continuation of our programs at the middle high school. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I don't have much to add. I mean, I think as a committee, we really made a vow knowing that, and we've met as chairs and vice chairs and worked through the whole year trying to come up with the best solutions. And this was something that I think happened sort of at the end where, we made a vow to not cut what we have because we're at such a low point so far. And moving forward with some of the cuts that were there would leave us in a place where trying to get that back was going to be harder than it was to get rid of it. And it was a situation where there was enough voice from this town that spoke up and expressed the need and the importance of that position. And that voice was heard. So we were kind of in a position where we had to make a vote. because of the timeframes to get something to town meeting. Mr. Milanowski's recommendation was that night was to vote. And to me, it was the right thing to do, to vote that money in and see if we could find a conclusion. And if not, then we'd have to address that situation. But at the time, knowing that a vote needed to be had, we made that decision, and I made that decision to support it, because I feel that that's my job. You have a very different scope than we do. And our scope, although relative to the town, and I think the town and the schools have worked really well together over the past couple years. I'd like to see that continue to build and these conversations continue to happen. Because no matter what we do, there's conversations about possibly pushing it off or moving things off. And those are situations we need to address. And I know that Mr. Germain has made some conversations about some things to move forward with that too. And I think that's a great thing. Because what I've noticed is the more we communicate as a town, the more things happen and the more things get done. And I appreciate the efforts of these gentlemen to meet that need and to come up with a really creative way to make that happen and support the schools in the best way that they can, because to me, this is just another example of how the town and the schools are working together. And I could make a list, as I do at most meetings, of the things that are happening to do that. So from my committee's perspective, we appreciate the efforts to do this and hope you can support it to make us whole and keep us where we're at. And would answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to address the other items that are on here?
Certainly.
And just to reiterate, just to make sure everybody is clear, that essentially what this solution does is to achieve exactly what the school committee voted the other evening. It's just an alternate way of funding it. So
we'll revote the number at our next April meeting.
right, thank you.
Moving forward, Mr. Chairman, to item D, and these are all listed out in the informational summary, if anybody wants to read those in more detail. Item number D is a reimbursement to the Redevelopment Authority, and this was a previous agreement that was made, it was actually 2 years ago, where they funded part of the master plan, and it just didn't make the warrant last year to get reimbursed out of their account, so this is just reimbursing them for the master plan of $8,700.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt, and I just want to be clear that that's the comprehensive town-wide master plan, not the town hall master plan? That was a question, sorry.
2 years ago, we weren't doing a town hall master plan, so that's what it was.
So it was the comprehensive plan.
The master plan.
Anything else?
Not on that, unless there's any other questions.
Okay.
Yes, I have an issue with G, Article 5G.
If I could do E first.
Oh, all right.
So item number E is the capital outlay reserve fund reimbursement for the fire department PPE gear. Just like the finance committee, the capital outlay committee has a reserve fund. And I think, as we all know, and we had Chief Weston and his team present in front of the Board of Selectmen, that their protective gear was over 10 years old. I think everyone has seen some of the new studies that have been done on the carcinogenic issues with that, and we were able to move forward and buy new turnout gear for all of the personnel. And this is, in essence, to put that money back into that fund. So that's what that item is.
And just to refresh everyone's memory is that essentially the gear had expired to the point where the fire department could not even participate in training because they weren't allowed to participate in training because the gear had expired. So we had to make an unexpected midterm purchase of that equipment out of the reserve fund in the capital budget. And now, again, all we're doing is returning that money to the capital budget in this year's town meeting.
Correct. And any
Mr.
money, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to recommend that we let the town administrator go through all the letters, and then after we find out what the finance committee did, then we can go on to our own discussions of each individual letter, because I have a couple of things I want to say about A and B.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation.
And my final point for Section E is this capital outlay reserve fund. It takes a vote of both the Finance Committee and the Capital Outlay Committee, so it has that additional checks and balances, and it's for special expenses that need to be done.
So both of us had to agree to it at the time.
That is correct. The next item we have is the Recreation Committee Startup Support Funding for programs and activities in FY '20. We had hoped to put this in our operating budget this year, but it didn't make it in there. I am committed to making sure that that happens next year. We've slowly been growing this recreation program and offering more services, and it kind of follows the focus the Board of Selectmen had, starting 5 years ago with the increase of opioids and all of the deaths that were happening in town. You wanted us to look at alternative means to giving children and adults more recreation activities for other things to do. So, we continue to move this program forward with Mary Ross in their program. Item number G, and before I talk about item number G, just to refamiliarize everyone, last year at town meeting, we made our last bonding proceeds for projects as we were finishing up the middle high school, the police station, to move that forward. And with that, we stated that any future expenses for the police station, that we would be looking at one-time cash, or we'd be looking at the capital outlay committee, or we'd be looking through savings through other projects, which we knew we were going to have, given how well we've managed other projects. Currently, right now, we have a little over $5.1 million for the police station, and that's enough to cover the building. In addition to that, and you'll see it in one of your appendices in the back, I think it's Appendix L, I believe it is that, right now, our cost estimate, is a little over $5 million for the building, a little over $1.1 million for site improvement costs. The outbuilding's about $700,000, and all that adds up to about $7.5 million. So with that, you're going to have separate articles throughout here that talk about supplementing those previous votes, again, out of one-time funds, out of the capital outlay committee, or out of saved funds, which again is following through with what we talked about at the last town meeting. So this first piece is $249,180. That's the residual that's left into the free cash article, and that will be for the police station and also to fund the town hall complex site improvements, including parking and demo. We are going to have to demolish the existing building, and we are going to have to improve some of the traffic circulation around the town hall complex. So that $249,000 is added to the existing money as we work our way to a $7.5 million number. The next item is Old Colony VOTEC additional assessment for FY19. After we had the budget voted last year, we did receive some additional assessment from Old Colony VOTEC that we didn't have budgeted that year. We have put those into our 2020 budget, and that's what we do when we run into a problem like this. We use one-time funds to fix it for that year, but the next year we build the correct number back up. It was an unanticipated increase in school enrollment at Old Colony VOTEC. Next item is other post-employment benefits, $25,000 into that item, which the town has been doing very well at starting to reduce that $40 million number down to something that's closer to being in reality, but still a long ways away. And then finally, J is the North Carver Water District and well infrastructure debt for FY20. We've talked about this every year, is that due to some of the decisions that were made in the past, which includes reducing betterment fees down by the North Carver Water District, that pushed the burden of that debt service onto the town. In addition to that, prior to construction and during construction, there were many engineering issues that happened with that project many years ago that we're still paying the cost for. On this, we have heard from the Route 44 Development Group that they don't see a need for expanding the existing water system, the 100,000 gallons that it's approved for right now. With the additional 40-plus gallons available should be enough to satisfy their development. And I brought this to the attention of the North Carver Water District that, as we move forward in the future, we need to find a way of reducing these costs down so it can no longer be a burden on the town, so that we don't have to subsidize that district every year. So that is what I have for the update on Article 5, and I think Chairman Germain wants to talk about their votes.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. We took this article up, we broke it out into two separate votes. Article 5, item A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J was voted 5-0. Item C was a cause of concern. Item C ended up, and I'll explain, I'll give you the vote count and then I'll explain it. Item C was voted 3-2.
In favor?
3-2 in favor. The problem we have is not the art teacher. We don't have a problem with saving a job. We have no problem at all with taking a part-time, what could have been a part-time individual, making it a full-time individual. We want to be the bad guys. We have a problem with precedent. We have a problem with setting a precedent. We're taking money out of the school special education reserve. We're taking money out of the snow and ice budget. We're putting it into an item that's called O&M field maintenance and surplus, and then we're actually turning that money into money to save a teacher, which is some fancy footwork. The problem I have with it is that we need this to be a one-shot deal. We don't have a problem with it, but the Finance Committee was very concerned about what happens next year when it's $60,000. In the following year when it's $160,000, and then it comes back to us that, well, you know, you did this 2 years ago. And what happens if that special education reserve account that is now down to $104,000 runs short? Then what? We take that $21,000 and where is that going to come from? So after a lot of discussion, and I'm sure that there are members of my committee that like to speak on this also, the vote was 3-2. And in deference to John Carter, who wasn't feeling well, he came to the meeting downstairs with a little bit of a cold and said, I can't do it. So he was one of the opposition. And, you know,
Okay.
that's where we're at with it. George?
It wasn't just the education that we were worried about. We were worrying about other departments coming in every year, asking for additional funds and that type of thing. If we set up the precedent to take this, and that's what we were looking at, every year somebody else would be coming in and going through it. And that was one of the big discussions, and that's why there was a split in the vote.
Okay, thank you.
So my problem with this is that the wording is to supplement the school budget. Take the word school out of there, supplement the budget. Every department came in front of the Finance Committee and discussed their budget with us. They were given a budget. They all did level service this, year. But if we supplement this year for this budget, what's going to stop Meg next year from coming to us where we asked her what she wanted and she'd love to be able to pay her employees more money because she lost a really great employee this year? What's going to stop her from coming and saying, hey, look, I'm losing another person. I want you to supplement my budget. It's just that precedent we didn't want set. Mm-hmm. And looking at it purely finance, because this is the Finance Committee, I wasn't looking at it as an art teacher. It was finance. We don't want to set that precedent every year, or at least I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Now you know why that was a topic of discussion, and a pretty good sized one. Everything else on the article had no problem with. My only last comment on this is as long as we can be relatively comfortable with the fact that this becomes a one-shot deal, I still would prefer to see some kind of a wording change, and that would be my recommendation to the board, that there be some kind of a wording change so that we don't use the wording that we're supplementing the school budget. Because honestly, Meg sat before us, I said, if you had your wildest dreams, what would you like for your department? And she asked for raises for 2 key employees. Didn't want anything for herself, but the money wasn't there. Well, so what's to stop next year from, where you did it last year? So we are in favor of saving the teacher. Please don't misunderstand that it's not that we don't want to save a teacher's position. I don't want this turned around into a school versus town, because it's really not. It's truly not. But we have to look at it, and I said this downstairs a little while ago. There's a fiscal responsibility of the finance committee, and there's the right thing to do of the finance committee. And the two don't always equal. And tonight was a case where it really didn't equal, but it was the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll come back to the Board of Selectmen. I know we have our new town moderator, Sean Clancy, here, so Sean, if you'd like to step up to the mic, because one of the things that strikes me before we start on this is, here we have a bunch of articles going through J. Have you given any thought, are you thinking that you might ask the town meeting, do you want to do this as one vote, or take them individually? Have you given any thought as to how you'd like to approach this?
Well, just going off of last year's town meeting, we that's what we did. We split stuff up like this, so.
Well, we actually, I think, on this last year, we voted it, and it didn't pass, then we went through them individually. And they ended up all passing.
They passed, yeah. Yeah, so just going off that may be what town meeting prefers, but I'd say it's open for a conversation. I think we should consider what's best for town meeting, or what town meeting might prefer, or what might save more time. If we think that they're going to unravel all this anyways, probably save time just to do it to start off with, right? And I think we talked about that at town meeting last year too, is like, well, hey, maybe we should have just started off with this unraveled because we spent time unraveling it. So
I was thinking maybe you could ask town meeting, would you like to take this in one vote or individually? And if someone raises a hand and says individually, then we just go that route. But again, you wield all the power at town meeting, as you're going to find out. What you say, you are literally a god at town meeting, so you get to make these determinations. But I do agree that making the right call, we probably would have saved 40 minutes by the time we got through with all the debate. So. I would defer to you in terms of the way you'd like to approach it.
I think that's a reasonable approach, is just to ask people what they prefer right up front, and proceed that way instead of going down a certain road and then having to backtrack and redo it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, I actually think that we need, this board, since it is our warrant, we need to vote these articles separately.
You'd like to vote them separately?
I definitely would.
Okay. All right. I certainly am willing to honor that request.
Thank you. And then the moderator, as chair of town meeting, if he wants to ask town meeting that, but I think that we need to have voted them separately.
All right, well, first, the way I'd like to handle this is I'm just going to say A, and if anybody wants to talk about A, let's talk about it. And then we can vote it, and then we'll go to B and C. We'll work our way down.
Okay.
Is that all right with everyone?
That's fine.
All right, let's go A, Town School Special Education Reserve. Mr. Dunham, I believe you wanted to speak to this.
Yeah, they're all kind of related, so I may be repeating myself a little bit as we go along, but I'll try not to.
Well, if you'd like to mention that this also applies to B and E or whatever, then we wouldn't have to listen to you again.
It's A, B, and resulting in C.
Okay.
So A plus B equals C, a little jumped.
Okay.
Basically, we created the Special Education Reserve to make sure we could help the school out by making sure they had enough money if they got a student in partway through the year. And now we're going back on that, not through really our fault. And then the same thing, we've been trying to slowly build up our snow and ice removal, and now we're taking back 20,000 of that one also, just to come up with the 41,000. To me, as it stands right now, if we leave this line item in the school budget, we are just really kicking that can way down the road. Because as much as people want to make sure we don't have to go through, the possibility of losing a position, be it teacher, be it cafeteria worker, be it custodian, anything, we have to make sure that the budget is under control. And through Mr. Milanowski, I did request some information. I wanted to know, since the two big budget busters are the salary increases due to contractual obligations and health insurance. And I did get that information, although I have a question on one of the increases in the insurance, if Mr. Brothers would like to give me a high sign here. Basically, the insurance for FY '20 goes up $142,000. FY '21, 284,000. Then FY '22, 288,000? That's a good number. Okay. And then the contractual salary increases for FY '20 is 258, FY '21, 316, FY '22, 422. For those who you adding up, this year it's a reasonable 400,000, which they still ended up with a $41,000 problem. Next year it's 600,000, and the year after that it's 710,000. And I don't want to see us get into the position, I agree with Mr. Jermaine 100%. I'm really leery of setting a precedent that, well, you used one-time money for 41,000, why don't you do it for 141,000? And that is how this town got into trouble to begin with. Because for years and years and years, we didn't put money away in capital. We would use our one-time money, including a $700,000 windfall from the electric company, to go into the operational budget. And so that just didn't end up, again, that's kicking the can down the road. So we have to come up with something. We're not going to solve it this year, obviously. I would like to see the O&M field maintenance and supplies for FY '20 just be yanked out of the school budget and just have that be filled as our budget item on the town side, because as Mr. Malinowski says, we're taking over all the sports fields anyway. This way, we're not supplementing the school budget. They can go ahead and then they can, at their next meeting, just say, we don't have this line item anymore. We have money budgeted to it. Can I have a motion to reallocate this to salaries or whatever? That way, we're getting through this year, and this is just a real small Band-Aid, which will get us through this year and maybe next year. But I'm looking at those numbers for FY '22, and there's a huge problem coming down. There's a train coming down the track that we need to start thinking on how we're going to attack it now. So I'm not going to oppose any of these, but I have genuine concerns, and this is not my preferred method of how this should have come about. I'm glad that a solution was worked out between Brad and Meg and Scott and Michael. But I'm also not a big fan of just kicking a can down the road, just say, well, we got through this year, and have the same thing again next year and the year after. So that's my piece. I'll get off my soapbox.
Other members of the board? Ms. Ewens?
Thank you, if I may. I get what you're saying, Alan. Typically, we're not supposed to spend one-time money for a recurring expense. But we just heard our chair of our school committee and our superintendent tell us that this is what they worked out. And I just also want people to know that according to Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 34, neither we, nor town meeting, nor anyone else in town can actually tell the school department how to spend their money. So what we just heard them say was, we'll have to figure out something for next year. And we can't tell them what that is or how to do it.
I realize that, but that's why
or how to spend it.
That's why I said I wasn't going to oppose any of this, but that's also why I said I think we should just pull that line item out of the school budget, because it's always going to be covered by the town anyway. Then it becomes part of the town's operating budget.
Well, if that's what the school department wants to do, then
That's
what
my
they'll do.
recommendation. That's what I'm asking. I'm not demanding that that be done.
Well, I think they just told us what they wanted. Maybe I misheard.
We're saying basically the same thing.
Not really.
Anyone else? Mr. Townsend?
Just quickly, I share many of Mr. Dunham's concerns about one-time money, but I think it's important just to point out that this year we recognized we had a problem, and folks were able to come together and sit down and solve the problem. And I think that's ultimately what's important, that we took care of here. People came together and they sat down and they solved the problem. And I think that's what we do here in Carver. I'm proud of that. So,
Anyone else?
I thought
I thought it was a pretty clever way to fix a problem, quite honestly. I see the first two as special ed reserve and snow and ice as a possible need. I see an art teacher as an absolute need. It can't live without it. And so I'm all for that, 100%. Great job.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one more thing. I agree with Mr. Robertson, you know, you don't want to lose any department. I mean, my daughter, when she went through, made a lot of use from the music department, and it got her a long way in college, and also the AP, which comes from the great teachers that they have at the school. So I don't want to see anybody get lost. But I just want to point out, taking care of a $41,000 problem is a heck of a lot easier than trying to take care of a $141,000 problem, or whatever it comes up in 3 years. So that's just why I'm saying we need to start looking at that now, not wait till next year and then to start looking at it.
I guess what I would add is that I think had we sort of caught it early enough, this is actually a capital item. And had we, in the early portions of the budget, caught on to the fact that this could have been relieved from the school department and picked up as a capital item, because we've actually picked up a lot of what formerly used to sit in the school department's capital budget and moved it into the overall town capital budget, which has opened up additional monies in the operating budget. So this is, I think, in keeping. So I'm comfortable with what we're doing this year, because in point of fact, we're really sort of it's something, we're sort of making up for something we might have missed that we could have caught early on that could have saved this. The other thing I want to mention is, you know, what Alan says is absolutely right about where we're heading, but I want to, you know, everyone should understand the school committee and the Board of Selectmen have been meeting on a quarterly basis for the last 3 years, for the very purpose of discussing this very issue. We all know that this is unsustainable. It's unsustainable for the schools to try to run a school department on 2 or 2.5% additional monies a year. The town of Carver already gives more money to the school department than any other town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the school committee appreciates that. They understand that we're doing that. So, you know, this is really, when you get down to it, a state problem where the state has abdicated their responsibility. I pointed out the last time we had a joint meeting that if they had just maintained the percentage that they were giving us 5 years ago, there'd be an extra $1 million in the school budget. But instead, they have not done that. So no one should get the idea that the schools are being irresponsible with their approach, or that the town is not being fair and working with the school department. This is a bigger issue, which is why we're talking over this summer of putting a committee together to start seeing what we can think outside the box. The governor just put out something today about trying to come up with other ways of looking at funding education and working with other communities to share resources. And this is what we're going to have to do in order to survive. I bored people to tears with the fact that in 1997, my son was able to have a Latin class. We are so far away from being able to have a Latin teacher now, it's ridiculous. But we need to offer the children of this town the best possible education we can. And we need to take the good guys and bad guys out of this. It's, we are working together to try to do this. We've got stuff like charter schools and school choice that are coming into play. I mean, if we didn't have kids going to charter schools and had that money back in the school budget, it wouldn't repair the school budget to where it needs to be, but it would certainly put them in a much better position. So we need to continue to work together and bring the FinCom involved as well to try to find a way to do right by the students in town. And we can't have the idea that the town are the bad guys or the schools are the bad guys. We're trying to resolve this. And we're gonna, and our commitment is we will work together and come up with the best possible solutions. One-time money just is truly kicking the can down the road. In this particular case, as I say, we really should have caught this earlier, and it would actually have been legitimate capital money, and we wouldn't be having the discussion. But as it is, I think the way it works, I think we've got a solution now, and it's another good example of the town and the schools working together to get a solution. So, I think going on with what Mr. Townsend said, We just, and as Mr. Dunham said, it might well be a bigger number next year, and we've got to be prepared to deal with that when the time comes. So,
Mr. Chairman, just one
Yes.
point of clarification, and the town administrator can correct me if I'm wrong. We don't give more money than anybody else
That's right.
to a school budget than any other, because there's
higher percentage.
of our total income. The highest percentage of our income
If you go to
goes
the the Department of Revenue website, we, more of our town budget goes to the schools than any other town in the Commonwealth.
in a percentage.
And Mr. Chair, if you
As a
go,
percentage, yes.
if you go to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and look at the numbers for the required net school spending, we're right in the middle of the pack.
Right.
So let's remember that, too.
Well, it's fine, but we still have limited resources.
No, I understand. I just don't
Again, I'm
want,
trying to get away from the idea that we're not doing everything we can.
no, I'm trying to emphasize that we are in the middle of the pack. We're not giving, there's 164 above us, school districts, and about the same under us. So we're right smack in the middle. In
But
terms of,
nobody giving a higher percentage of the
I'm
town.
not talking about percentage, I'm talking about that bottom line net school spending.
I understand.
Which is a number that is equal for all, overall towns. So you're not factoring in other stuff.
It's just a question of resources,
No, I understand that. I want the numbers to be clear, that's all.
as do I,
Very good, we agree.
sort of. Okay, so I think we've covered A, B, and C. Moving to D, the redevelopment authority reimbursement. Any discussion there from the board? E, capital outlay reserve fund reimbursement, fire department PPE protective gear.
Great expense.
F, recreation committee startup support funding for programs and activities, FY20. G, police station, town hall complex site improvements, including parking demo.
Mr. Chair, I think that, first of all, I would like to know what these three items are, because I believe that the voters who come to town meeting need to know exactly what they're voting for. I'd like to know what the site improvements are. I'd like to know where the parking is going to be located. And I'd like to know the demolition of what. Because that's just not clear. Is this the article where we're talking about demolishing the playground? Or is this talking about demolishing the old fire station? I mean, it could be demolishing anything. So I'd like that really spelled out here in this article.
Can anyone provide any clarification as to any specifics related to this, or?
Mr. Chairman, if I could call your attention to Appendix L. It's for items in Appendix L, and as to what the uses will be for. And in addition to that, what I would also say, and I think just to avoid any misconfusion, is that these funds that are here in this would be not used for any part of the existing playground or any part of the new playground. This is, as it says, tied into the police station and the town hall complex site improvements, including parking and demo. The demo, the only thing that we're demoing from a building standpoint is the old police station.
Well, I think that needs to be spelled out in the article.
And Appendix L is, you can look at there, and all those items I just said are in Appendix L.
And once again, Mr. Chair, I would appreciate if these appendices were printed in 12-point type so that people can actually read them. I can't
Yes.
actually, correct.
You think that's too small?
It is for me. I'm
Appendix
sure
L
I'm
is
not the only
12-point font.
person in the world who can't read it.
Yeah, Appendix L is 12-point font.
NXL is 12-point font, I'm told.
Oh, good. Let's see if I can find it.
This is not.
That's not.
And where does it talk about demolition in this appendix?
Demolition is not listed, site preparation, site utilities. Demolition is not listed in this piece directly. Demolition is not listed in here.
Then why does the article say that this is for site improvements, parking, and demo? We need to know what
Well,
we're
because we
actually...
still have to tear down the old police station, which is
Then-
part of the plan.
Then, Mr. Chair, I suggest we put demolition of the old police station in there, if you don't mind.
Well, and to be honest, my question on this one is, do we even have to assign it to anything specific as opposed to just adding it to the available funds for the construction of a new police station to be utilized as needed?
Yeah, sure. And in item number G, I can put in there for demolition of the existing police station. I think that would satisfy it.
And where are we getting funds for demolishing the fire station?
The fire station?
The old fire station,
We're
the
not.
existing? Oh, I see. Mhm. And where is the article that specifies the demolition of the existing playground?
That would,
It's being done through in-house labor.
Where is the town meeting article that specifies the town meeting's permission to demolish the playground? In 1999 and 2000, town meeting voted to build this playground on its current site. And if we're to put a new police station on there, I believe town meeting needs to vote on the demolition of the current playground.
I don't think that's correct.
Well, I think somebody needs to check that. You can't just demolish something without town meeting's approval. That voted on it twice in a row.
All of
Actually,
the
3
bu-
times in a row.
Yeah, all the buildings are in the care and custody of either the Board of Selectmen or the school committee.
Wouldn't that fall under part of the site prep for the new police station?
Yes.
However, in courtesy to our member, I would ask you to check with town council to make sure that that's an accurate interpretation.
All right, and then in item G, we will specify that it's for demolition of the existing police station.
Other questions on item G?
Yeah, I'd like all 3 of those things spelled out, as I said already. What does site improvements entail? Parking where? And demolition of what?
Mr. Chairman, we will add some additional descriptions in G to correspond with Appendix L and also the site plan as approved by the Police Station Committee.
And I believe the town administrator stated already that the demolition in that article refers to the demolishment of the old police station. I mean,
But
I don't know how many times we need
It
it
needs to say that in the warrant.
Well, fine, and he's admitted that he will put it. He said it in there before your last, so it's going to be in there.
Good. That's good.
All right, and you'll add clarification about site improvements and parking as well.
That is correct.
Thank you. Anything else on G? H, Old Colony VOTEC additional assessment for FY19.
Yeah, I think that's pretty simple.
I, other post-employment benefits. J, the North Carver Water District for well and infrastructure debt. All right, we'll go back to A. Town School Special Education Reserve at $104,000. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. B, townwide snow and ice, $130,000.
Moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Please wait till I call for the vote. Mr.
Yes, sir.
C, townwide O&M field maintenance and supplies for fiscal year '20 for $41,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it. D, redevelopment authority reimbursement, $8,700.
Moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. E, capital outlay reserve fund reimbursement, fire department PEE protective gear, $396,030.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. F, Recreation Committee startup support funding for programs and activities, fiscal year '20.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. G, as amended by Ms. Hewens, Police Station Town Hall Complex site improvements, including parking and demo, $249,180.
Mr. Chair, I would like to request that we table this until we can see the final wording. I'm not going to vote for something I don't know what it says.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, if we wait to vote on that one at our next meeting, we'll not be making the requirements of having the financial articles published in time for town meeting.
All right?
That's it.
You make a motion to table?
Yes, I am.
Is there a second? Being none, is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
I'd like to approve it with the additions that.
Yeah, it's
Sarah
as
has
amended
asked.
by Ms.
Okay.
Hewens, I said.
Yeah, okay. I will-
And so was there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Let's see. H, the Old Colony VOTEC additional assessment for fiscal year 19.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. I, other post-employment benefits, $25,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. And J, the North Carver Water District for and infrastructure debt fiscal year 20, $250,000.
Motion to approve.
Second. Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, we go to Article 6, fiscal year 2020 operating budgets for town and enterprise funds. Mr. Clancy, we aren't supposed to leave. You're supposed to stay up at the front here for discussion purposes.
We want you to have a good feel for this.
So,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
You're not keeping track of just how important you are to this whole operation. Did you have any thoughts, looking at this, as to how you wanted to handle it? And I might note again that in all these articles where it says, "and any other action related thereto," that'll be changed to "any other action relative thereto."
Thank you.
I mean, in the past, I believe, this is the overall budget, correct? And I believe, normally we spend, about an hour and a half discussing a $5,000 account and approve this in about 5 minutes. So I guess, again, you can say, just take it as a whole, and if someone objects and wants to do it differently, we can.
Yeah, normally I do about a 10 or 15-minute PowerPoint presentation going over the budget. A few questions are asked. I think historically this is generally voted unanimously by town meeting. But I'm going to have Meg present some of this, but just for reference, in Article 6, this article has been split out to pull a few things out of there at the request of the selectmen. Article 6 refers to a couple of appendices. Appendices A, which is the org chart. Appendix B, which is the pay scale. Appendix C, which is the salary classification plan for elected and non-union employees, as well as appointed boards and committees, followed by Appendix D, which is our 10-year pro forma that specifies what our fixed costs are, what our revenue is, what our fixed costs are, and then what the percentage is with the town. And then Appendix E, which is the breakdown for salary and expenses by each department. I do want to point out in Appendix E, I put in the wrong one, and there's a $4,000 difference in the top of page 2 of Appendix E, which is the ambulance fund. I need to change that by $4,000. But in the article number 6, it is the correct number. I just have to change the appendix, which is off by $4,000. From there, Meg, if you want to just go over the article with just the numbers and how they tie back.
Sure. So under the first section, townwide shared budget, that ties back to our revenue. Actually, all of this ties back to our revenue forecast, except for a section down below. But the townwide shared budget includes the snow and ice budget, the Old Colony VOTEC, the excluded debt on the elementary school, and the transfers to OPEB, capital debt and stabilization, et cetera. If you look at the general government budget, that number, $10,071,990, ties back to the town's share of the revenue forecast. The next section, general government budget paid directly by fees, that includes the ambulance budget, which is self-sustaining, and also includes the indirect costs from the enterprise funds, which is applied to the general governmental budget. The school budget of $23,840,433 also ties back to the revenue forecast for the school's allotment. And the last section are enterprise funds, which does not come from raise and appropriate. They are self-sustaining or self-supporting. and that is the North Carver Water District of $269,906, Cranberry Village of $30,099, and that last section, North Carver Water Betterment Debt Stabilization, that is when we have prepayments on betterments, we are told by DOR that we have to earmark that to be applied to the debt for the district. So that's what that is. That's prepayments that were made in FY18 that will be put into the Water Betterment Stabilization Fund for future payment of North Carver Water District debt.
And just for a little color on that, is those betterment payments are spread over 20 years, but if someone sells their property, then they're required to pay that off at the point of sale. What has happened in the past is that sometimes that's put in the operation budget and just spent as operation. We make sure it goes into the Betterment Stabilization Fund, so we pull out, in essence, 1/20th of that every year, so that we have a more even flow in our debt structure that's in there. So that's why that was another change that we made, because initially, some of the funding for the North Carver Water District was, their operation budget was being paid for by these betterments, which was the wrong way of doing it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
um,
Well,
wait, we
if
got
it's going to
the,
be questions, I want to go to the FinCom and see
Oh,
how they
okay.
responded, then we'll come
Yeah.
back to Selectmen questions. So, Mr. Jermaine?
Do you want me to take up the stipends now, where it's part of the salaries? First of all, this entire article was voted on, and there were some abstentions. Kate abstained from EMS, because John is on the EMS. Beth abstained from the fire department's budget, because her husband is a volunteer firefighter. And I abstained from the stipend increase for the Conservation Commission because I sit on the Conservation Commission. That being said, when we were asked to look at stipends this year, I hadn't even given them a thought. And when we looked at them, a couple things jumped out. One that jumped out was the selectmen's pay. So we took that up in a discussion, and we came to the conclusion that we think the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, probably soon to be called the Select Board,
Well, that's to be decided.
frankly, works himself to death. He's in the town hall every day, he's in contact with the town administrator 2-3 times a day, he puts out all the fires, and he directs what's kind of goes on. We thought that the difference between the old schedule and the members' schedule was inadequate. I spoke with a couple of selectmen, asked what they thought, and I did not speak with the chairman specifically because this was the biggest increase we were offering was for the chairman. So it is our unanimous decision to step the Board of Selectmen chairman's salary to $3,000 and the member's salary to $2,000. When it came to the Conservation Commission, I spoke on it from the standpoint of what do we do? We have, actually, Savory left. And I look at it from the angle of we do as many, if not more, site visits than planning. A lot of times we go back on a second and third site visit to planning for conservation. We hold 2 consistent meetings a month. They're on a regular basis, just like planning. We have a conservation agent. Planning has Stephen. And we thought that the differences between the 2 committees was like night and day, and I tried to find out why. And somebody told me, well, because, planning runs for their office, it's elected. Well, that's not true, because I went back and dug up old minutes. And at one point in time, the planning board was getting $1,400 a year. I don't know where, and then 2 years ago, it got knocked down to what its current level is. So I abstained from the vote, but the committee voted, without me, The chair should receive $1,000, which is the same amount of money that planning now makes, and the member should receive $800, which is the exact same amount of money that planning makes. And that's how that was voted through. We thought that the two committees do pretty much the same stuff. I know that in the limited, and I use the word limited because Jim Nowen, God bless him, he does site visits 2, 3, 4 times. Savory does the same thing. Savory rides around Sampson's Pond in his boat taking pictures of people that are violating, so he knows what's going on. So they watch out, and they watch out in a big way. So we thought it was well worth the thank you, if you will. So I tried to find a way to make it so that the chairman of the Finance Committee could bring this issue up and not make it sound greedy. And that was a problem. I mean, I didn't want it to sound like this is, so, but that's what we have, and that's the end of the result for the voting on that particular article.
Just a quick question before you continue on the rest of it. So are those recommended increases included in this
Yes.
operating budget?
Correct. Yes, they're on Appendix C.
And then do you want to address the rest of the article?
The rest of the article was voted as follows. Like I had said, 501, with Kate abstaining for EMS, Solga for the fire department, and Jermaine for conservation. So other than that,
501 in each of those cases.
501 was in each of those cases, so the entire article is 501.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now to the board.
Yeah, just want to double check that number for the school budget. Is that the number that the school committee and Mr. Neep expect to get to make sure that our teacher's in there? Considering after what we did with Article 4. What I'm getting at is that's 23,840,433. Is that our original number that you could, because that doesn't reflect the 41,000 you added, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The number printed in the warrant does not reflect the number voted by the school committee at the last meeting.
Okay, and you're happy with that?
Finding an alternative solution.
The number at the school committee voted last meeting was 41,000 and change,
Yeah.
higher than that.
Okay, but you're happy with this considering what we're voting on for number 4?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure of.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and for the record, we asked the exact same question of Mr. Malinowski during the meeting, and we got the exact same answer, so that was a question we put forward too, and make sure these numbers were correct.
And just for further clarification, at the next meeting, I think we heard the chairman mention that he's going to make that motion at the next meeting so that the school committee adjusts its budget at the next April meeting.
So my question here is if that's all right, and the numbers are actually wrong, but they'll be corrected, why is it that that's going to miss our deadline, the financial deadline?
No, our number
No, this number is correct.
is correct.
Based on the action they anticipate taking at their next meeting.
All they have to do is at their next meeting, take their budget and move that 41,000 to where they need to move it
No,
to.
I understood that. Thank you.
All right, other questions from our board, the Board of Selectmen?
Again, I think it would be really helpful if Appendix E that lays out the general government budget be a little easier to read.
You know, I've looked at that, Sarah, I just don't know how you can do it without having to, go to significantly larger paper.
No. Just make the type slightly larger, that's all. We used to do it all the time, Ron, for years and
Well,
years.
I'm looking at this, it's a pretty full page. If you make the type larger, it may not fit on the page.
If you do it landscape, it will. The
So,
orientation, landscape.
Mr. Chairman, what we can do is, we could take out 2 of the columns, the 2 from the end, the 2020 Town Administrator recommendation, because the only one that matters is the Selectmen's recommendation, and we could also take out the department request. So you got 18, 19, and then the final one. That'll
I think the
free up a
department
little.
request is sort of important, though.
Yeah, I do
agree
too.
with
I think if it were put in landscape mode orientation, you'd be
Let's try removing the town administrator recommendation on landscape mode and see what you come up with. Now, Sarah, if you can have the cataract surgery I had, you wouldn't have a problem with this. So, just so you know, one eye's for distance,
Thank you,
one
Ron.
eye's for, looking close, and it works out perfect.
That may not
So-
be my problem.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we'll put this in landscape.
I'm not
mode.
the only one.
You can root for cataract surgery.
Right,
That's
I'm
all
not the
saying.
only one who needs reading glasses, Ron. That's all
But
I'm
if you
saying.
have reading glasses, you should be
This
able to
is
see
not
this.
about me, Ron. Can we move on?
Better without my glasses.
Okay, so, any other questions on this article? Being none, does someone want to make a motion?
I move we approve Article 6 as presented.
There a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Sarah, we're just gonna try the landscape mode because
Yeah.
there's too many formulas tied into this that'll make half a day to adjust this.
I think it'll work.
Okay.
Okay, we go to Article 7, Fiscal Year 2020 Establishment of Revolving Fund Spending Limits.
Yeah, so this previously was in Article 6. It's been pulled out separately for Article 7. Just for clarification, 2 years ago, under the Municipal Reform Act, we amended the bylaws to include this language, to include the verbal description of these items, so that only every year we're just approving the budget numbers for these revolving funds. Now, with that, there is one more piece that's going to be added to this, the council's still working on, and that's under the solar metering net credits, is that in the language that he's working on, he's going to add in there that one of the eligible expenses that we can do is to convert to LED lights. So where we have incandescent lights, we can use this fund to convert to LED, which then saves energy. So there is going to be that one language change that'll be into this. That's the only change that we anticipate.
All
And
right?
just if I could, for clarification, and we'll probably need this vote at some point tonight, is that all the votes you're taking on the language is all subject to town council final review and minor edits that don't change the substance of the articles. So I'm just throwing that caveat in there, we're gonna do anyway.
Okay. I'll turn to the FinCom for Article 7 and how you dealt with it.
For our clarification, this actually became Article 7A, because right down below that is Article 7 again, and it's it was a typo.
It should be
In fact,
Article 8.
in the description of the second Article 7, it refers to Article 8, but for the purpose of the vote, and we video recorded our meeting tonight, so that became 7A, and the next one became 7B. And this was a unanimous vote, 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
With the additional language for the LED lighting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point. We have Article 7, which Finance says went to 7A, and Article 7 went to 7B.
Well, that was
However,
just
the
for
ne-
their purposes tonight. I think when we get it.
It's going to be
redone,
Article
it'll be
8.
7 and 8.
Okay.
Correct?
The
Yes.
next one will be Article 8.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Article 7, Fiscal Year 2020 Establishment of Revolving Fund Spending Limits. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
Here I go again. Recreation Committee, going 20,000 to 100,000. Why?
Well, they have a full-time, well, not a full-time, a part-time rec director, I guess would be the title. So that, right now, you'll see it being paid for through the free cash article, but it should not be coming out of free cash. It needs to go directly.
It's going to come under their budget for
Yeah,
next
so
year.
that will
For
be.
next year.
Right, exactly. So it's for that, and also they're trying to build up the recreation programs. Now, this article here just sets a spending limit. It doesn't say that they're going to be spending that much. So usually what you try to do is set it higher than where you really think it's going to be, because you don't want to be in violation of that threshold.
Thank you much. I know there was some consternation that I'd heard from members of the community of, how does it go from 20 to 100? And you explained it very well. Thank you.
Okay.
Other members of the board, questions on Article 7? Being none? Someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we approve Article 7 as written.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please
Point of
signify.
information, you need the additional language for the LED lighting.
Is that part of the motion?
Yes, it's part of the motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further you're talking to me or?
No, him.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I
The
suspected.
real chairman.
I understand.
Wow.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. We go to what says Article 7, but what will actually be Article 8, the capital improvements budget. We have a list here of the items that are up for approval as capital items. Transportation building lighting upgrade, $55,000 to it, moving it to LED. Replace the 604 dump six-wheel with sander and plow, purchase and equip fiscal year 20 for $200,000. These are all fiscal year 20. Fire tanker 2, purchase and equip, $495,000. Rehab heavy rescue number 1 frame, purchase and equip, $10,000. Police and fire equipment for new hires, $15,000. Police cruiser replacement, purchase and equip, $45,000. Townwide technology upgrades, $142,000. Capital reserve account, $600,000. Replace school 71 passenger bus, purchase and equip, $79,500. Replace school minibus, purchase and equip, $31,000. School wheelchair accessible van, purchase and equip, $50,000. High school gym baskets, $15,000. Annual reduction in debt exclusion for the new elementary school, solar, $100,000. That's the committed solar monies that are directed to help reduce the cost to the homeowner for paying for the new elementary school. Debt service, lease payments, interest, project management, disclosure statement, townwide capital network and oversight, townwide maintenance contract, $1,897,211 for a grand total of $3,734,711. So I will again now ask the Finance Committee how they dealt with this article.
We voted unanimously to accept it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay? And no issues with any individual items?
I'm trying to recall, I don't believe anyone did. Anybody on the committee?
No, we didn't have.
And capital outlay also voted 5-0.
Members of the Board of Selectmen?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with anything, but I'd like to forewarn the town moderator that given what I have seen on social media, I can anticipate at least one item probably having some discussion.
Can I ask a
Just
question?
to give you a heads up.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, is this, every one of these, correct me if I'm wrong, every one of these require two-thirds, or is just one of the big items only require two-thirds?
No, what it is, they all require 2/3 because how we set up our financial policies is that this goes into a stabilization fund. So all the money's transferred into the stabilization fund. And
Gotcha.
we require a 2/3 for it to come out of the stabilization fund. It actually is a higher bar, but it makes sure that everyone knows what's going on.
Thought we had an issue last year where one article, one item required two-thirds, the rest was simple majority, and it
And that-
failed.
we did.
We broke it apart.
That was
It was a
correct.
different
It
article,
passed.
wasn't this one.
Okay.
It was in the CPC article.
And I guess, Sean, probably when you get to this, you'll have to see what it's the way you want to handle it
Yeah,
with
the
town
same
meeting.
precedent we're setting for the other ones, I'd say we probably just do the same thing here, is ask
Yep.
people if they want to
Yeah,
split it up.
this will get broken out separately, mark my words.
Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of, and Alan, did you want to suggest as perhaps what you think may be a controversial article, so we could discuss it here, or?
I don't want to give ammunition, and, because I'm hoping that maybe we won't get into a discussion, but some of the things I've read, and it tied into the new battery storage project, I can foresee there being some discussion as to why the town is paying for this.
Okay. I guess I'd ask the town administrator, can you speak to the $600,000 for the capital reserve account?
Sure. So, the big items that we have here is the fire tanker number 2. And that has been on the capital outlay committee for a couple years. We currently have a 30-year-old tanker that has had some rehab, but does need to be replaced. The second major article is the $600,000 for the capital reserve article. As I mentioned, the capital reserve is overseen by both the Finance Committee and the Capital Outlay Committee. This is strictly for funds that the committee has saved for making projects go under budget. So we use that to fund the capital reserve so that when special projects come up, they have that flexibility to handle mid-year items like that. So that $600,000 is one-time money from funds that have been saved over the last couple of years.
How does
Only
that-
in capital.
How does that tie into the capital outlay reimbursement?
Separate. I mean, the same program,
Yep.
just different funding.
Okay.
Just if one's out of free cash, one's out of free cash to reimburse, the other one's out of net savings for all the good work that the capital outlay committee's done.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board? Ms. Hewens?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I was just thinking about what Alan said about, let's see, Article 8C.
The fire tanker?
That would be the one I would anticipate, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern is that not everyone in the world is on social media, and there are people who depend on their information for what happens here on Area 58. I know you don't really think that, but there are. And what happens here also gets into the newspaper. So I don't
If you want, I'll give you more details.
I don't think explaining it puts you in a position of having to take one side or another, but I do think it should be explained what the potential
Okay,
controversy
the
might
issue
be.
is,
Well, C is the fire tanker to purchase and equip.
right. First off, it's not to, it's going to be used as the new primary tanker. The other tanker, even though it's 30 years old and has exceeded its normal lifespan, will continue to be used hopefully for another 10 years. So, but it's going to be not used as much. Now, as far as the discussion that may evolve, you all know that there's a project that's been in front of the planning board for a while now. It's concerning a battery storage facility off of Main Street and down back of Peltola Lane up in there. And in part of their initial discussions, it was discussed that after a fire department review, if it was determined by the fire department that we needed, we were going to need an additional tanker just for that project, that the project people said they would probably be willing to go ahead and purchase that for us. Fire department has not laid that claim. There is no need. There's sufficient water supply in very close proximity that they can reach with engines and laying up hose. And the water source is 5.2 million gallons, which is more than sufficient for any fire suppression operations of this magnitude. There was also mention of, well, what happens if it's frozen? Well, in the wintertime, the fire department goes into water holes all through town that are frozen, and just you break out the axe, chop a hole, put your suction in, and away you go. I think what the problem's going to be is someone may, or maybe several people may, raise an issue of why, if they're willing to purchase one for us, why are we spending the money for one? And also, by laws, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Malinowski, we're not allowed to coerce or force a entity that wants to do a project in town to go ahead and pay for something like that.
That's correct, we're not, but a board can accept a gift.
Yeah, if they're a gift, if they wanted to. But it was during the discussion, if, as a result of that evaluation by the fire department.
And I guess to just add a little bit more color to it is, we have three public safety offices or departments in the town. One is fire, and fire has stated that they have the appropriate equipment to handle any isolated item that will happen on that potential site. So they have all of that equipment in place. Again, we cannot extort or require impact fees. There's no mitigation that's necessary, and therefore the fire department did not request anything. However, in the past, where there have been, if you will, some waivers that were required for another solar project where the road was narrow climbing up an old landfill, and the fire department didn't have the right type of apparatus to climb up there, in that situation, because there was a need for mitigation where the department didn't have the right equipment, and to allow that project to go forward, the developer did agree to buy a piece of equipment the department didn't have. Again, two clear distinctions between the two different projects. And I think unfortunately, too many people with social media just assume things that, just that we don't have the legal authority to do, nor is it right to extort a developer that's following the rules and, like everyone else.
Does that help answer your question, ma'am?
Oh, that wasn't my issue. I would never suggest that anyone was extorting anyone.
No, the
That
fact
wasn't
that
the
was that a
point.
good enough explanation of what I was alluding to.
And no one needs to really explain it to me. I just want people out there
All
who
right, well,
may
do
not
you
have
think
another opportunity to hear it
I
here.
think they'll understand it, what I said.
I hope so.
Okay.
And just if I could summarize, as I understand it, the developer made the offer that if the fire department determined that the project had a need that would go beyond the resources of the fire department, they would be willing to fund the additional tanker, and that the fire chief and his staff determined that as they review the project, they did not see that need.
The deputies reviewed that, yes. The fire chief was not involved in this one.
Okay.
And that was all discussed back in 2017.
All right, I just want to be clear, because I would always defer to the professional staff at the fire department as to, I'm absolutely sure the fire department, if they felt that this was an additional resource and obligation, that they would ask the developer to proceed, so. Okay, thank you. Other questions on this article? This one want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Excuse me, we go to Article 9, Community Preservation Committee Report and Recommendations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is nothing new on this article. It's a standard article we see every year. The CPC is required to put 10% of its revenue into community housing, historic, or open space. Plus, they put 5% into their administrative expenses. The remaining goes into their undesignated fund. What you will see this year in item B is the $329,000. That is for debt service for year one of the recreation complex, and pretty much it's about that number for the next 10 years. So again, nothing new. There's no projects. We are going to be talking about a project in Article 2. But this one is just for their standard CPC stuff.
So letter B would be dependent upon Article 2 passing.
No, this is, B is for the sports complex for the middle high school.
Oh, okay.
You pay the $329 whether you voted or not.
Finance Committee,
5-0 in favor.
discussion for the Board of Selectmen? Or let's go with a motion first, I guess.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Being none,
Stuff.
those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We go to Article 10, reallocation of funds for the police station. I believe this is a series of older articles that had monies left within them.
Yes, so this article right now, Meg and I are working with bond counsel on to work on the appropriate wording for this. So we're going to be bringing that up at your next meeting for the final wording on just reallocating these funds. These aren't new monies. These are just reallocating existing funds from other projects that were done. Predominantly, I mean, in a nutshell, as we did the the elementary school, town meeting approved $52 million. Again, the original project was around $67 million. With that, our allocation for the project is going to come in under $48 million. There's going to be in excess of $845,000 to transfer from that project to the new police station. And again, this goes back to last year when we approved the police station, is that we were managing the project so well, we knew these funds were going to be coming up, so we didn't want to borrow more money if there was going to be money to reallocate. But we do need a few more days to work on the framework for that article. Again, it's not new money, it's just reallocation money that's already been approved to a new project.
So this doesn't affect our pledge to have our budget out there 30 days ahead of time?
We're not raising and appropriating new money, we're not trying to, there's no new money here, it's just reallocating old money to the
All right,
project.
so we're not taking any action on Article 10 tonight?
That is correct.
We voted
Mr.
to
Ch-
table it.
Okay. Is there a motion to table Article 10?
I'll move that we table it.
Second.
Discussion? Being none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are we,
You can do Article 11.
Article 11, Old Colony Regional Agreement, to see if the town will vote to approve the amended agreement among the towns of Acushnet, Carver, Lakeville, Mattapoisett, and Rochester with respect to the establishment of a regional vocational technical high school district as proposed by the Old Colony District School Committee, a copy of which is on file at the office of the town clerk, at any other action there too.
Mr. Chair, before we go on,
Yes.
when are we actually voting the Community Preservation Committee's Article 2?
Later tonight.
Why are we waiting so long?
The only reason we did that is just because the Finance Committee is not voting on that, so I figured that would be a discussion, so didn't see the need to keep them here for that discussion.
Why would they not be voting on it?
We were asked to, and frankly, it's a CPC item, and we were not involved in any of the other discussions with it. We didn't think it was appropriate to stick our 2 cents worth in.
Okay. So we'll finish up the rest of these finance articles with the FinCom and then move back to Article 2 then,
And that would be the intent, yes.
okay?
And I think Alan can actually speak to the Old Colony, because he went to that meeting.
Just for information, we'd be more than happy to sit here while you go through Article 2 if you want, because, you know,
You're that bored?
poor Kate's having a rough night.
Um,
I did go to the Old Colony Board, and simply from what I gathered out of it, and I have not seen the final document, but from what I gather out of it, it's exactly as is stated in the informational summary. It's not been reviewed or updated since prior to the Educational Reform Act of 1993. All it was done here was they cleaned up the language. They made no new rules, they made no substantive changes to the document. They just cleaned up the language and simplified things. Every one of the towns mentioned, their council looked at it, sent back their adjusted copies and the wording, and Old Colony, to the best of my knowledge, according to the town administrator, has adopted it. So there was no huge changes. Our vote was 4-0-1. Kate abstained, even though she didn't need to, but her husband is the chairman of the school committee.
So basically, they took a document that was 23 years old, hadn't been touched, and said, we need to evaluate this a little bit.
That's exactly right.
Oh, okay.
All right, so
And they
this,
reimbursed our town council for his fees.
so this isn't really a money article, but we're going to take it up now.
That's right.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I move we move the article as written.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And I believe that's the end of all the money articles, other than,
I think we can do 13. You already approved 12, which was the name the selectmen to select board, so Article 13
I don't
does...
think we voted that.
We did not vote that yet.
I don't think
Oh, we did not vote that? Okay.
No, we voted to have it appear on the warrant.
Okay. So I guess Article 13 would be one as well.
Would you like to explain Article 13 to us?
Okay, you want to explain that?
Which, 13?
13.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
13.
oh, oh, that's the one that's from the treasurer collector, yes. Okay, so we had presented this to the finance committee, and they asked us to put in some other language. We had presented it last year, and the concern was this, by accepting this mass general law, it allows us to increase certain treasurer collector fees. But the idea being always, and the language is in here, that by accepting this, it allows us to increase those fees, but it would not open the door to just any fees being increased by various town departments. All fees would still, any increases would still need to be brought before the Board of Selectmen for approval. So this just allows us to increase those treasurer collector fees, but it does not open the door to just any department increasing fees.
All right. Finance Committee?
We sat with Laurie Hinault at that meeting. We had this meeting in November 27th, 2018. And she explained to us that the current certificate is, we charge $25 for it, and it actually costs the town more than $25 to prepare it, assuming it's a very simple background check. If it's anything more involved, then it gets more expensive as we go. She also said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Meg, I think that 2/3 of the cities and towns in the area are charging.
We had done a survey to make sure that these fee increases would be in line with other communities. We were still lower, actually, than most.
So, but the $25 was archaic and antique, and the $50 still didn't knock us out of the ballpark. And this is the fee that is put on the settlement statement for the buyer. So when you buy a piece of property and they add up all that stuff on the last page, that's, on a sheet that's this long, that number goes from 25 to 50.
It's for the sale of property, so it's not just a fee that all residents will have to pay. It's only if you are buying or selling, buying.
So our vote was 5-0.
But again, none of the fees change until they come to the Board of
Board of
Selectmen.
Selectmen, that language is in there.
It simply allows the request to be able to be made.
I think the way it was presented to us was we were in favor of it going from 25 to 50. In order to do that, we would have to give the Board of Selectmen, our suggestion was to give the Board of Selectmen the right to establish those kinds of fees. But we were in favor of the increase from 25 to 50.
And what was your vote?
5-0.
Thank you. Board of Selectmen, someone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, it seems to me that if this is, and I'm not contradicting Meg at all, but it does say that it allows any town board or officer empowered to issue a license, permit, certification, et cetera, to fix reasonable fees. I think that maybe, since we keep saying, but they have to come to the Board of Selectmen, that language we should probably put that language in the article, because it doesn't say that.
I
The
think,
article.
yeah, just for clarification, when we used to have an elected treasurer collector, they were the reporting authority to themselves. Now, a treasurer collector is appointed, through me, through the Board of Selectmen, so we become the appointing authority. And that, by definition, brings any treasurer collector fees back to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, since we're trying to be really clear here, so the voters know what they're voting on, it's not going to hurt to put the fees have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. I mean, if that's true.
I do have to agree, the way it reads, it is a little confusing.
It is.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd have to agree, as long as, it's not going to be that big a deal just to put in the phrase, subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen.
I agree.
And that was not the explanation that was given to the Finance Committee in order for us to approve this.
And it was actually, it was approved with it to say,
Board of
It did
Selectmen.
have the language. I think it was council that had us
Yeah.
revise it. I don't know,
But
because
it
it was, the language was
it
in there
did say
before.
Selectmen.
Yeah.
subject to the.
Yeah,
Board of
if the
Selectmen.
intent is that it has to run by the Board of Selectmen, then that wording should be in there.
The article also doesn't have the phrase, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mine does.
Mine does.
Yeah, it does.
Mine does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm looking at an older copy, I guess.
Well, you should be using the new copy. Okay, so, does someone want to revise the motion to include, to make sure we get the wording cleared up, to make sure that specifically it's understood that any increase has to flow through the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, that would be very important, because our vote hinges on that.
Yeah.
Right.
It was in
Well-
there before, I know
Right.
it was.
Okay, motion made, was it seconded? Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Anything else money-wise, Mr. Milanowski?
What are we doing with Article 18?
Article 18.
Money petition articles?
Any petition articles?
Maybe that was it.
Mr. Jermaine,
Yes.
Article 18?
Citizens petition articles.
We would do
Article
17.
Article 15, we
17
tabled
first.
5-0, just for the information of the board, which is the tax overlay for Plymouth. Finance Committee has an input on that. We table that.
All right.
Sorry, Article 17, let's go to that one first. Article 17 leads into 18.
We're not gonna deal with, you don't wanna deal with Article 16?
No, we're just doing money articles tonight.
Okay.
We'll fight that battle later.
I had a thing prepared for you. I had a thing over here.
You can be here at our next meeting, I'm sure.
The board at our last meeting asked for information on the stretch code.
All right, well, you know what?
No,
We can be
no.
flexible.
I'm good.
We can be flexible.
I'm good.
This will save us from having to listen to you at the next meeting.
Not really. Article 17, the grant program. Gone over this and over this and over this. I'll be very brief. Our committee voted 6-0 to establish a grant program for the nonprofit 501c3 corporations requesting money from Carver. In the past, we've done this as a money article. Mass General Law and our Constitution says that giving a charity money from town municipal funds runs against the anti-aid amendment, which simply says you can't unless, and this is the only unless, and we've had town council verify this, unless the town receives something back in return for the donation. So, I give you $50, you buy the town $50 worth of Coke and pass out at Shirtlift Park. That's okay. I give you $50 and you buy $50 worth of Coke and pass it out in Plimpton, and we have a problem, because the town of Carver taxpayers paid for that. So our proposal was to establish a grant program capping at $25,000 maximum. It lets us budget this money every year, and a maximum of $5,000 per applicant. And there'll be an explanation about that in a second. The whole reason this came up is because this has been going up year to year to year. This year was $23,000 that was requested. I believe last year was a little bit less than that. The year before that was more than that. And town meeting always gives them the money. But they don't have to come back and tell us what they did with the money. Now, do we know that South Shore Community Action's gonna ask for $5,000 and use that $5,000 in heat assistance to the town of Carver when they give you a statement that says they serviced 1,000 people in 700 homes? Yeah, you can be pretty sure of that. But it doesn't, without that document in writing, we don't know that, which means there's a problem. So, we would like to establish a grant program with a $5,000 cap, $25,000 overall cap, with the exception of if the grant program is passed this year for us to administer, that in Article 18, which we would then ask the town to vote no on, and everybody that's in Article 18 would be in the grant program administered by the Finance Committee on Article 17, and we would also honor Shane Gives Thanks' $6,000 request, which would go against our $5,000 cap, but that's only fair because that's only fair. And I don't have a problem with that. So that's where we're at with it. It allows us to vet the applicant. I don't have any problem with Social Community Action, or Women's Health Organization, or Shane Gives Thanks, or Town of Carver YPAC, which is withdrawing the.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, they were drawing this, yeah. I don't have any problem with that. But next year, it might be another organization that we could never have heard of. Or maybe we have heard of them, but we haven't ever done anything with them before, and we don't really know what is it you want to do with the funding. So, if we're gonna give you $5,000 and you're gonna spend $2,250 of it on Carver and the rest is gonna go into your other place you have down in Lakeville, that's not right. So within the grant structure, We're looking at a 75% requirement that the funds be spent, 75% of the funds be, at least 75% of the funds be spent on the residents and taxpayers of Carver, so that Carver gets something back for the tax money. Personally, and this is strictly a personal note, and I want to say this in all honesty, I think if you want to donate money to an organization, you should write your own check. I don't think we should be using taxpayer funding for any of that stuff. But we've done it in the past, and I think this is the best way in the best of both worlds to have it be vetted, so we know what they're going to do with it, what they want it for, and then they come back 8, 9, 10 months after the program and give us some total numbers as to where it went. We also have proof that they really are a 501c3 corporation. We need tax information. We don't need a tax return. We don't need detailed profit and losses. We don't want to know all that stuff. We just want to know that we're doing business reputably. That's all. So the
If I could-
Finance Committee's vote was 6-0.
Just get clarification for this year, if town meeting passes Article 17, they still could go on and
Yes, they
vote
could.
the numbers in Article 18, but
right.
in the future, going
right.
forward, it would revert
right.
to what Article 17 imposed.
That's right. But there would be no oversight. So if the town votes yes on Article 17, and again yes on Article 18, the Finance Committee will not be involved in Article 18. That's whatever you guys always did with these funds.
Right.
We're not going to oversee it, we're not going to vet it, they're not coming back in to tell us what to do with the money. If you vote yes on Article 17, then that will be the grant program we institute the following year.
And what was the FinCom vote on Article 17?
6-0-0. And on Article 18, we took no action, 5-0. And the reason we did that was because it's pretty obvious.
Okay. All right, so for purposes of us discussing Article 17, is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve Article 17.
There a second?
I second that.
Discussion. Ms. Hewens?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to read a short passage from the Office of the Comptroller, and this is on their website, page 4 of a document called Procurement Contracts, dated September 8th, 2014. On page 4, it quotes the anti-aid amendment that you were referring to. And it says very clearly that this section 815 CMR 2.00 provides that state appropriated funds may not be granted to a non-public entity unless
This is where the caveat comes in.
the grant funds are used by the non-public entity solely to cover the actual costs of fulfilling a public purpose to benefit the general public or a segment of the general public, and may not provide a direct benefit to be used for maintenance of the non-public entity not associated with the fulfillment of the grant. And then on page 5, it goes on to say, legislative authorization that supports an award of grant of appropriated funds to a non-public entity will either identify the non-public entity specifically by name or will identify as an intended class of recipients, which include non-public entities. The following are several examples, but it's not limited to. So these are examples of classes of intended recipients, which include non-public entities. Quote, community centers, rape crisis centers, regional tourist councils, community health centers, local councils, regional, and so on, community-based centers. In addition, legislation may be interpreted to include non-public entities when the purpose of the grant is capable of being performed only by non-public entities because government entities do not perform that particular public purpose. And I just wanted to make a couple of points about what it seems to me is going on here. First of all, the state law says that citizens can petition the town. So citizens can make petition articles whether this passes or not. They could petition the town for $50,000. That doesn't mean town meeting is automatically going to approve it, but it's the citizen's right to get 10 signatures of registered voters and put a petition article on the town warrant.
And this will never stop that.
Okay, so
That's
just want to be clear. I want everybody to know that.
Can't do away with it.
And second, and I think, to me, this is a little troubling, what you're proposing, and perhaps unintentionally, but it seems to me what's being proposed here is that the Finance Committee's role as a, what's the word I'm looking for? Advisory, as an advisory role. If this passes, your role then shifts to becoming regulatory. And in my opinion, the only legislative body here is the town meeting voters. These are the residents, the voters. It should be up to them to decide whether or not it's purely up to them, instead of having it be an appointed board such as yourselves, and I don't mean any personal offense to anyone.
Well, I'm glad you don't, because the fact of the matter is, there's no distinction between an appointed board and an elected board, period, when it comes to the Finance Committee and its operation.
No.
They share it equally. There is no more importance in either one. And
Alan,
I take a
wasn't-
little bit of offense, Sarah,
Could I please finish? That was not my intent. My intent here is that to become a regulatory board, which is what this article would do, takes away that regulatory authority from the town meeting. Because you are an advisory board, co-equal with the Board of Selectmen, as far as I'm concerned. That wasn't my issue at all. It's the nature of the type of board you are. So that, well, that's just very simple. And I think that should be very clear to the public, that if this gets voted in, it's taking that decision-making process away from the annual town meeting residents and voters. They are the ones who should require each of these organizations to come to town meeting and say, how are you spending your money? We don't want to know the names of the people you're helping, but how many of the people you help are Carver residents? Is this money going to Carver residents? And I believe in the past that's happened. Some of these groups have come to town meeting, explained themselves, and that's who they need to be explaining it to.
Where's the vetting process at that, though?
That's up to town meeting.
It's a 2-minute town meeting thing. They can
That's
tell
up to
them
town
anything they
meeting.
want.
They are the
If I might-
legislative authority.
If I might interject, if town meeting were to approve Article 17, they are essentially asking the FinCom to act on their behalf. They are empowering, they are recognizing that they are transferring the power from themselves to a board.
Well-
And if they choose to do that, that's the town meeting's
But that's
authority.
that's what I'm trying to make clear, so that everyone will realize that that's what's happening. It's easy enough to say, oh, sure, we'll and not realize they're giving up. If they approve this, they will be giving up their own legislative authority.
Mr. Jermaine, I'd ask you to make sure that when this is discussed, that people understand that, I mean, that was my understanding, is that this is transferring the responsibility and the authority from town meeting, but town meeting being the ones transferring that authority, they're doing it with knowledge.
Well, occasionally people do things without realizing the importance and the significance of what they're doing, and then come later to realize, oops, we didn't really mean to
I
do
am
that.
confident with you there that will not happen in this case.
Thank you.
Sarah, we have beat this thing to death on multiple meetings. This has been discussed and rediscussed and hashed out. This is, we're not on this, we have a reserve account that we oversee. The capital outlay has a reserve account they oversee. It's not like we have this thirst for power for $25,000 more that we can make somebody dance through a hoop for. That's not it at all. It's part of the fiscal responsibility of what's going on. Town meeting will vote yes on those articles, and I don't have any problem with that, none. This is what town meeting wants to do, I'm okay with it. The fact of the matter is that it's after they cash the check, and what did they do with the money? And then what are we going to do next year? Bring them back in and do what? As far as if they didn't spend it properly, if they didn't do it properly, until there becomes a problem with it. So we're just trying to simply look at everything from a responsibly fiscal standpoint. It's not one person making the decision to, geez, I like this guy, give him the money, go ahead and give him the grant. This is a group. This is a board. It's a board that can be made up, and it's in our annual statement, up to 11 people can sit on this Finance Committee board. We have 6. We have room for 5. In fact, one member will have to step down this year because he's run his clock out. You're allowed 12 years consecutive. And I don't know what I'm going to do without John Carter on the board next year. So technically, we have room for 7. And we'd love to have people sign up for it. So it'd be a good-sized board overlooking all of it. And obviously, every bit of it would be vetted by town council as well as, the interview with the applicants. It's not because we're trying to take away town meeting rules at all, or take away the power of the vote at town meeting, contrary to what some of the posts on Facebook have said. It's simply because we're trying to control costs within the town and keep them under control. So if they don't get to $40,000.
So my point, if I could just repeat it briefly, is that the consequence of this is it will take away the legislative power on this particular point from the town meeting voters.
It won't, because they can still go sign a warrant, get 10 signatures and put it out there.
And you guys, as well as we, have the authority to bring these groups to you. You have televised meetings. You can ask these groups to come to you and explain. So of the funds that the town meeting voted for you last year, what percentage of that was spent in Carver? Was it 100%, 75? You could ask them right there. And then you could make your recommendation whether to support.
We're beating this to death. Article 17 is asking town meeting if they want to transfer their authority to the FinCom. And town meeting will make that decision as to whether they want to do that or not.
Correct.
Well, I don't really think I would word it that way, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
That's essentially what
it's essentially taking, instead of them voting on the articles, although again, as you say, they could still appear, town meeting would be transferring those articles that traditionally appear and asking you to determine whether or not they're being properly administered.
So we're not going to use the wording, the Town of Carver grant program, we're not going to use any of that wording at all?
It's all in there. It's just, this is the end result.
Okay.
It doesn't have to change any wording. All it's saying is, as Ms. Ewens pointed out, is it's transferring, well, it could be transferring, because again, nothing stops any of the groups that are applying for monies from still petitioning and appearing on there. All right? They could come before you, and if you said no, they can end up getting 10 signatures and going onto the warrant. So all it's doing is hopefully what you've outlined.
And
But
town
again,
council, in their opinion, said that all of this money needs to be memorialized in a contract, which I don't believe we do.
so at any rate, I think it will be clear at the time, and it's up to town meeting to determine whether they want to transfer their authority to you. But even then, the same groups that might come before you, if you said no, they could petition.
Absolutely.
And move forward, so. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
4 in favor, 1 against. All right, we'll go back now to
Well, now do we-
Article,
18?
Can we get to Article 2, please?
well, we're taking things in order here. Money petition articles?
Yeah, 18.
Oh, all right, Article 18, what do we want to vote on them, or you want to table them?
The Finance Committee took no action.
That's correct, 5-0.
It's the pleasure of the board.
I move we take no action.
There a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
1 opposed.
That's correct.
All right, and I think in deference to the FinCom being here and the fact that they were prepared to speak to the stretch energy code, and that if we do that tonight, we don't require them to come back again.
We don't need to. We don't
You sure?
need to. Yes, we
All
don't.
right. We ready to go back to Article 2 then?
Are you guys going to vote on the stretch energy code and whether you want to put it in the budget, put it on the town warrant?
Well, we probably won't do that tonight. Since you were here, if you wanted to participate in the discussion, that was fine. If not, we'll just take it up.
I passed out the stuff I passed out.
Yep.
You know, I think we've said all we can say about it. And the only quick statement I'm going to make, don't take it up tonight, that's fine. But again, I will say that the Finance Committee is not in the business of establishing building codes. But the grant money that's available to the town, we need to be a green community in order to take advantage of that. So, 250 communities have joined. Do I somewhere along the line think that the current energy code is going to be the stretch code? Yes, I do. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. But we don't have any ability for grant money unless we become a designated green community. And one of the latest ones is our neighbors in Middleborough, to the tune of $197,000.
So what did the FinCom vote on this?
We were in, we were a committee of 5 that night, so it was 4 and 1 against.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen? Would you like to discuss this evening? I know that those of us that were here for the last meeting did get into this in depth. I'm comfortable voting on it. It's up to the rest of you.
I'm comfortable.
Fine either way.
Yeah.
All right, someone want to make a motion?
How do you feel? You want-
Well, I can't say that until after we make a motion so I can get into discussion.
Someone might want to make a motion to approve Article 16?
16. I will make that motion that we approve.
Is there a
Article
second?
16.
Is there a second? As chair, I'll second.
Well, for discussion, second.
Okay. All right, we're at discussion.
Thought you were going to take it up tonight.
Well,
Here we are.
While we're here, sit back and have fun. I know it's the last meeting because even though I wasn't here, I do believe one of our members asked for some research for a cost comparison of if we go with the stretch code versus if we don't. Mm-hmm. Was that done?
Yes, it's in your packet.
Oh, okay, well, you just handed the packet. I had no
was
idea
it
what
still in the
it.
$2,000 range?
Mr.
Depends on
Chairman,
what you're building with, if I may.
Yes, please.
This is as of August 2017. I don't think a lot of people in the town of Carver are using an electric heat pump, so I'm going to take something a little more realistic. Oil heat, and some places in Carver have natural gas, some places have propane. So oil heat, if you build a house according to this, which is the DOER sheet put out by the state, August 2017, the cost to the builder is $4,011. This is for a 2,550 square foot, 3-bedroom, single-family home with oil heat in Worcester, Mass. If you build with
So the
oil,
additional cost going with this stretch code is $4,000.
$4,011 with $1,593 in utility rebates for a net increase in the base code compared to the base code of $2,418. This was the most expensive because it was oil, and on the back, when it talks about the cost and the problems, you're talking about an 83% efficient oil furnace under the current base code to a required 96% efficient oil furnace under the stretch code. That cost difference is $1,759 in equipment costs because of the technology required. So that was on oil. If we went to propane, which I thought was interesting, the difference in cost was the upcharge to the builder was $2,606, same house, 2,550 square feet, 3-bedroom, single-family home, propane heat, Worcester, Mass. $2,606 was the upcharge. Utility rebates of $1,626 for a net of $980 increase to the buyer. Those numbers came in at, same thing, 92% propane furnace versus a 96% propane furnace of only $290 was the difference in cost.
And we're just talking new construction here,
New
correct?
construction. I want to be very clear. According to the 2017 stretch code, you have that with all the yellow highlight. It says additions, renovations, and repairs to residential or commercial buildings are not applicable to the updated stretch code. Only the base energy code is applicable. So we're not going to start dealing with, there's nothing for additions. Can they put it in later on? Of course they can. Can we vote at town meeting to not be a stretch community any longer? Yes, we can. So the building code as it now sits has been updated 3 times since the last time town meeting took up the stretch code, when they colossally voted it down, and I don't blame them, because the difference between the two codes was night and day. The original stretch code did adjust to renovations, did consider additions. So it was ridiculous. They've backed way off it.
Did you have a cost for natural gas?
Natural gas, I do.
Just to make sure we didn't miss that?
$976 is the natural gas cost, upcharge. 2606, 1630, 976, 980 with propane. The one that I thought was the most interesting, and I don't know if anybody's building with it, there was one that was a massive savings. Yeah, this one. If you put an electric heat pump in, cost to build the house is $2,360. The rebates are $4,900. The net back in your pocket to do it that way is $2,540 credit back. So the heat pump's the real big deal, but that's only because of the rebates from Mass Save and so forth and so on. Now, we spent a lot of time having to deal with the building codes because it was a building code. But the biggest thing was the fact that there was a tremendous amount of grant money available. So I did not print this for all of you. It's not secret, but it's a lot of pages, and I just didn't print it for you. Sorry. It's every single town. There's 250 communities, 240 communities on this sheet that have joined the stretch code. And I'll be happy to email. In fact, I think I did email this to all of you. I think you all have it in your inbox. Let me just grab, just because everybody knows where Middleborough is. And Middleborough just joined last year, so this is pretty immediate stuff. I apologize. This is the end of my discussion. Middleborough joined 12/28/17, so it's the end of the year before. $197,655
In grants.
in grants. You get a town that's been around a long time, like Acushnet, and I don't want to use Acushnet as the example because they were one of the first ones to join the stretch community. Started out in 2013. They got 154,000, then they got 208,000, then they got 131,000, then they got 132,000. So they've been doing all right. And these funds were for things like to fund the energy conservation measures in school and several municipal buildings. That was the $154,000, that was the explanation. To put LED lighting in town hall, that would be an explanation. To upgrade the electric in the library, that would be a grant consideration. The bottom line is without us being a green community, the grant money is not available. Our feeling, well, a few of us, our feeling is that the current code will continue, especially where we're on this 100% renewable energy thing, and the governor and the state is so involved in solar and alternate energy, that we will eventually be at the stretch code whether we want to or not. Whether they call it the base energy code, but it's really now the stretch code, those requirements, but now there's no money. So we looked at it from a financial standpoint. Unfortunately, that was the easiest part because now we had to get into the building code and selling the building code in order to, I really wish we had taken this up as a joint committee with the planning board. But that being said, we took it and it was voted, I believe the vote was 5-1.
I didn't vote.
4-1 then, I apologize. I know that Mr. Duggan was opposed.
All right, so essentially, if I'm clear, is that if we vote to adopt this new stretch code, it would put us in contention to receive some grants. And
170,000.
And as opposed to my recollection when we've attempted to adopt the stretch code in the past, the distance between the base code and the stretch code has really narrowed compared to what it was in the past.
Yes, it has.
All right.
In fact, very quickly before the Board of Selectmen vote, the base energy code in Massachusetts the base energy code is updated approximately every 3 years. The stretch energy code must be updated periodically in order to maintain the stretch. When the stretch code was first adopted, it was characterized as adopting the next version of the base energy code early, which is how it turned out.
All right, with that, I'll return the discussion to the, oh, I'm sorry, yes, yep.
I just wanted to also add that the grant funding actually is something that everyone already pays for when you pay your electric bill. It's actually one of the fees that's in there, and that's where the funding for the grants comes from. So
So
the money
you're
running
saying we're
out,
already contributing to the grants?
yeah, so the money running out may not happen because we're always going to be putting the money in.
All right, I'll return it back to discussion for the Board of Selectmen. Ms. Hewens?
Yes, and I understand from the state that this is, the stretch code eventually will be the base energy code. I know that's what we've been told in the past.
It's the when that we don't know.
Right, and the good news is that they've taken out the wording for additions and renovations, which was a big sticking point, I think, for people. So this would be for new construction.
Other,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Townsend?
So I think it was myself that asked for the cost analysis at the last Selectmen's meeting, and I did some checking with local builders myself in addition to the state numbers, and they all seem to come in pretty close. Some estimated closer to 6,000, but pretty close. But I also spoke to Seth Pickering, who's the local, I believe he's the local coordinator for Mass DOR, certainly he works for Mass DOR over in Lakeville. And the grants that we're talking about only come to the town when we're designated a green community. They don't come to the town when we adopt the stretch code. We have to be designated a green community. There are 5 criteria that a town has to meet to be a green community, and he tells me that right now we've only met 2 of them. He tells me we haven't adopted an energy reduction plan in the town, and we haven't created a fuel-efficient vehicle purchasing policy. So even if we adopt the stretch code, we're still not in line for any grants, because we won't be a green community.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he
there-
told me. In fact, I spoke to him once, and then I was questioning it. So I called him back again and asked him a second time. And he gave me the same answer both times.
No, what Mark is saying is correct, is that we have to do those 2 other tasks, but they're administrative. It's very quick to do that, because when you're looking at the reduction in the energy fleet, look at what Carver has. First of all, any emergency vehicles don't apply, and any DPW vehicles don't apply. What would apply is if we had, our Board of Health truck. And the next time we go to buy a Board of Health truck, we'd have to buy something energy efficient. That's all you have to do, is just put together a plan for
Saying
that.
it doesn't take action by town meeting to
It
make
does
these
not take
additional
action, it's
adoptions?
just, that's a vote of the Board of Selectmen, as I believe it. So those 2 other things that needed to be done are very simple to do. And then the energy efficient plan, I forget what you called it, is, he also explained that, that's just looking at our buildings and going through our buildings. Okay, the new elementary school, got 2 thumbs up on that one, that meets everything. Our fire station, 2 thumbs up. Our new police station, 2 thumbs up. This building, okay, we need to upgrade these lights, and here's a couple things we need to do. We need to replace the compressors, and when they happen, that'll be a priority to do. So you're correct, those 2 things need to be done. As it has been explained to all of us, is those are very simplistic to do, but they're steps.
He made it, when I spoke with him, it sounded like the energy reduction plan was relatively simplistic, but the vehicle purchasing policy was not as simplistic. Do we have some type of timeline where you think those would be accomplished?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, when he presented to us, it was that you have to adopt a plan, and you don't have to go and buy anything today, tomorrow, the next day.
No, I think that's correct. I think
It's
you have
when
to
the
adopt
next
the plan.
purchase is that, so the plan's quick. The question is, when will the plan be implemented? That could take 3, 5, 7 years, depending upon when the next time we need to purchase a public safety vehicle or a non-DPW vehicle.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Fuel efficient, criteria 4, which is I think what you're referring to. Purchase only fuel-efficient vehicles for municipal use wherever such vehicles are commercially available and are practicable.
My question's not
cruisers-
about the criteria. My question is when we're going to adopt it, so it's in place for the grants. That's my
Oh,
My question?
the answer to that question is we would make that happen, within 30 days after town meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, those things we were told are very simplistic. It's, Matt, and he said he would come over and help us do that.
That's right.
And that he has actually a consultant that would help us with the energy one and look at our buildings and do that so that we would be in time for the next round.
But he did say that with the proposed new police station, with the new school, with the new fire station, which is all ultra-efficient, we're already, when you look at the overall town, there's no hoops we have to jump through to meet that savings criteria, because we already get all the credits back from the school and the fire department to offset, which will give us the grant money to upgrade the less efficient buildings that are here now. And if we're building a police station, obviously, that's going to be efficient.
Okay.
So, yes, it is the green community. Heavy-duty vehicles over 8,500 pounds are exempt, so everything over a half-ton pickup truck, and police vehicles, of course, are exempt until they are commercially available. Then they may not be but that's only fuel efficient, not electric, it's just fuel efficient. I believe that some of these new police cars now are the new hybrids anyway, the flex fuel.
They're flex fuel, and then there's talk of probably in about 5 to 7 years, they may even had diesel interceptors for police cruisers.
Sarah, I think you wanted to speak?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, of the 5 criteria, it's true that those 2 that aren't done are administrative. We've done 2 others as well. The stretch code's always been the problem, because it's the only one that has to go to town meeting, which, I'm in favor of it going to town meeting. But it has been a hurdle in the past. The rest of them are either administrative, or this board, or the planning board does something, they adopt a certain kind of zoning that was necessary. So this is really the big hurdle. And again, things have changed a lot over the years, so that I think it just isn't what it used to be.
It's nowhere near as restrictive. as it used to be. I'm
Exactly.
sorry.
That's,
No,
yeah.
and I was concerned too about number 3, which was create an energy reduction plan to reduce energy by 20%, but it's over 5 years. So it's not like today that we have to reduce the energy by
Right.
20%.
Correct.
And I was concerned that the school already being done would sort of take us out of the running, but he said no, that would count.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So-
absolutely.
Well, I didn't know if it was as we adopted it, 20% from where we are today to them, but
Okay.
he said the
Oh,
school
good point.
would
Did we
count.
do the heating system on the high school?
Middle high school, yes.
So, I
All right,
apologize.
Mr. Dunham?
Okay, I'll be the skunk at the pool party here.
It's not a new role for you.
I know. The state, you said, took all these requirements, took out the additions, took out this, took out that, and it's just as easy for the state to put them back.
Sure it is.
1, I don't trust the state. 2, I do not trust the environmental groups. The hardcore environmental groups have already pressured the state to adopt a new building code for parking lots to increase the number of stands where you can plug in your car. I'm sorry, I don't trust them. If it gets to the point where it's mandated, we have no choice, well, then so be it. But as long as we have a choice, I don't see going with it.
But if I may,
I knew I'd get you.
well, Bill loves you now, there's no doubt about that, because he says the same thing. But we can vote this back out via town meeting. Now, I don't know what that would do to grants. I would assume grant money you got and spent is c'est la vie, but grant money in process, you would then lose.
Yeah, you would no longer be eligible to
You wouldn't
apply
be
in the
eligible.
future.
But if this did get super restrictive, then special town meeting, 30-day notice, and we're no longer the stretch code community.
Yeah.
That is possible to have that happen.
Yeah, you can vote that out at any time. I think the other point that I'll just throw out there, and I think it was mentioned earlier, is that today, Carver residents and Carver businesses are paying for this program. That money is being used by Duxbury and Marshfield and Plymouth and all these other communities. They're using Carver people's money to fund programs in those communities. And, because you have the ability of canceling it at any time, if you don't like how the programs, goes forward, you have a way out. So I would just, say, consider that as well.
I think the moderator's thinking we've already gone ahead and touched all these subjects several times.
And Sean, feel free to jump in anytime you feel that you want to.
Hit the gavel when we're repeating ourselves.
All right, I think we have a good understanding of what the issues are here. So we've got a motion and a second to approve our Article 16. What's the pleasure of the board? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 No.
No.
Opposed?
No.
It passes 3-2. Okay. Now, Article 2. And by the way, the Finance Committee, if you want to close your meeting, and you're welcome to sit around and enjoy the rest of the
Watch how
meeting.
fast this happens.
Being here.
Is there a, yeah, you may.
Nice to meet you.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn for the Finance Committee. All those in favor? Opposed?
On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I really want to thank all your members for the obvious time and energy that you put into this. It really, you know, it's, the FinCom has, you know, had its peaks and had its dips, and I think right now we're seeing a terrific Finance Committee that's really done a tremendous job by the town, and I believe town meeting members should be very comfortable believing that you've done the very best you can to vet all the issues that'll come before them. It's up to them to decide how they're going to vote the issues, but I'm very comfortable that you really looked at everything every which way, so thank you all for your service. We really appreciate
Nothing
it.
but
Mr.
respect
Chairman, I
for
think they've
town
done a
meeting.
great job in revitalizing the Finance Committee. It's something the town's really needed for a while. You're getting good participation in your meetings now, and I want to thank each of you for being here, even if we did keep Kate up too long.
Agreed.
All right, I would ask the Board of Selectmen
Nice to meet you.
to turn to Article 2, the community...
Page is that?
Pardon me?
Oh,
Page
never mind,
4.
I found it.
Page 3.
It's wonderful.
Community Preservation Committee recommendations. The Community Preservation Committee made its recommendations for expenditures of funds this year. They broke it up into 4 separate votes and have asked that each be managed individually for Sean's benefit. It's pretty clear that this is supposed to be taken individually at town meeting. A would be $286,225 for the playground. And B would be $136,425 for the parking area. C, $87,350 for the infield. D, $90,000 for the other site improvements. So we will start with A, $286,225 for the playground. And I believe what we're talking about here is a playground located out on what is known as the King property, and building a new playground there, similar to, of equal kind and quality as the one that we currently have existing next to the library.
I believe it's equal to or better than.
Equal to or better than. Do we know what the votes were by the, are they listed here?
Yes.
How they voted on each of
We
these?
do know the votes of this is, and they're not listed here, but what I can tell you is that for 2A, I believe the vote was 5-2. And that's for the playground, no, it might have
I
been.
think it was 5-3 because there were
5 to-
eight people there.
Yeah, it was 5-3. For the
Favor.
park,
In
in
favor?
favor, yep. For the parking, I believe that was 7-1.
And
For-
parking, we're talking again about expanded parking back where the ball fields are behind the old police station.
Correct, where it's dirt
Just to
right
be
now
clear,
behind.
that's the area we're talking about for all 4 of these items.
Yep, behind the little restaurant.
So that's 7-1 in favor of the parking area.
Yep. 2C was unanimous. And D, I think, was also 7-1.
And that would be involving putting in new wells and some site prep work, and also like restroom facilities would fall under that, and a new snack bar.
That's correct. So those are in items Appendix I and J. I is the field plan that shows everything in color that will be done, and J is the 2-page budget, which, again, they're funding $600,000. The total grand budget was $747,000, and they were funding $600,000 of the $747,000, not to exceed.
All right, as we've done with some of the others, we'll take these individually. We'll start with A, $286,225 for the playground.
Mr.
Is
Chairman,
there
you want to have a motion?
to approve and a second, and then discuss, or a motion for whatever, but.
Okay, I move we approve Article
2A.
2, Section A.
Second.
All right, we're into discussion.
Okay, well, I'll start off. First off, this money is only for the new playground. It does not doesn't any of that going to be used for the dismantling of the old playground?
Correct.
Okay, so that money is going to end up coming out of site prep for the police station then?
Site prep, or we'll use DPW O&M labor to tear it down.
Right, I mean, but I'm getting at it.
None of this money is for the existing playground at all, it's all for new construction. You will see the word demo in that appendix, and that's for demoing the existing fence and stuff like that on the King property.
It involves site prep for the new playground.
That is correct.
As well as purchasing and installing new up-to-date equipment, not stuff that's near the 20-year lifespan.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you much.
Quick question, if A is not supported at town meeting, would B, C, and D still be applicable?
Yes, they would.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear. All right, other discussion for 2A.
It's a great plan. I've got no discussion.
All right, motion made and seconded in support of Article 2A, $286,000, 225 for a playground. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-1. 2B, $136,425 for the parking area.
Move we approve.
Second.
Further discussion?
I think it should be parking area by ball fields, as you pointed out.
I would question that, though, because it could also be redoing some of the parking lot, especially by the old fire station that goes up towards the third base corner of the Little League ball field. It could involve that. I don't want to restrict them as to just dirt.
Sarah, it shows in Appendix I where the parking will be.
I think you were looking for specificity and relative to.
I was, and I'm noticing the article also says on the King property, so that's pretty clear.
As detailed in Appendix I and J.
Further discussion? All those in favor of 2B, $136,425 for the parking area, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 2C, $87,350 for the infields, and just for clarification purposes, since when I was back in college during the summers, I worked for the Weymouth Outdoor Maintenance Department and renovated many an infield and know exactly what's
You're
involved.
going to be giving us some volunteer work on this.
Absolutely,
then.
I will be overseeing the work myself.
No, not overseeing it, doing it.
Lead by doing.
I will be overseeing myself, the work myself.
I make a
they're talking
motion.
about basically taking the infields that are over there and bringing them, up to being a nice caliber of infield that makes it safe for the kids to play ball there.
I move that we approve Article 2, Section C.
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. And 2D, $90,000 for the other site improvements.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Article 2, Section D.
Second.
Further discussion?
What does it mean?
Yeah, I'd like that to be clarified. What are other / and then site improvements?
As the article says, refer to Appendix J, and in there you see other site improvements. It says a new well, $20,000, irrigation upgrades, $10,000, concession and toilet upgrades, $30,000, site lighting, $30,000, for a total of $90,000.
Could we get those just added beneath D, just for
Yeah,
ease
just in
of?
case someone can't find Appendix J.
Let me talk to the CPC. They were very particular in the wording. That's why they have the appendices that are there.
Well,
I can do it in the informational summary, and we can put it in.
As long as it appears immediately below there, so
correct.
we can refer it to people.
That's my
instead of
issue. People need
sending
to
them
know
back
what
to
they're
the-
voting on. They don't want to sit there and look through 18 different appendices to find that out.
Well, hopefully they've gone through and been very proactive and have downloaded all this information off the town website, so they'll come prepared and know where all these things are also. You know, that's just another option.
Have you been to a town meeting before?
Yeah, I'm just
Alan,
saying,
not everyone has that kind of access or ability.
most do.
No, not everyone
All right,
does.
we're getting off track.
Yeah, I
We
think
need
the-
it,
I
we
think-
need it on the warrant.
I think the key is to make it as easy for people as possible.
Correct.
So if we can just move that down to immediately beneath, that should be fine. Any further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any other articles that we need to pursue tonight? The rest will be,
Before we move
Ms.
on,
Hewens?
Mr. Chair, in the informational summary too, the way that's written, this is the typical summary that is correct for Article 9. In other words, where it says,
Article 9?
hang on, so that was the second CPC article, and in that article, it says, under the Community Preservation Act, the Community Preservation Committee is required to make these recommendations. And in Article 9, that's correct. These recommendations are every year, it's supposed to set 10% aside for each of the 4 categories. That's what we did in Article 9. But in this article, the Community Preservation Committee is not required to make these specific recommendations, okay, on these 4 things. That's not, it's not required by state law to make these
Is
recommendations.
that written in here?
It's right here.
They're required to make recommendations. I will delete the word
Then let's cut
these.
the word "these," please.
I will take care of that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Was there there were no other articles that we're taking up tonight? Okay. I'm going to try to find my agenda. Sean, if you'd like to go home and get some sleep before work tomorrow, feel free.
Oh, by the way, there's going to be a test on this for you tomorrow.
Well, it's all recorded, so.
Thanks,
And
Sean.
thank you for being,
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're working on Area 58 to make sure that when you watch it from home, that it doesn't cause a migraine. So we're fixing it.
And
Video
Sean
at
and
the
I
same
are
time.
doing a cable show this Friday. I'm not sure when it's going to air.
I thought it was Monday.
No, Friday.
Mr. Moderator?
Going
Mr. Chair-
over-
yeah, Mr. Moderator.
Just hitting all the articles, just trying to give an overview of what we're going to be
Okay.
looking at town meeting. Very informal.
Mr. Chairman, we mind if I talk about the purchase we've made to help move discussion along at town meeting?
Oh, did we get the timer? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We've gone ahead and we talked about it, and to make sure that discussion and debate maintains a good flow, and we don't have people just going on and on and on, I believe Sean's decided 3 minutes.
Yep, and we've got some rules that we're proposing to put into an article, so.
And you'll have a green light. When you get in close, it'll be a yellow light, and when you hit the end, it's a red light, and you're done.
No hook?
We could probably get one.
I will always defer to the town town moderator in terms of how that works, but that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, just try to apply the rules equally across the board as
Okay.
best we can, and hopefully that moves things along. Hopefully gets more people to come out to town meeting in the future.
Great.
See?
All right, thank you. And again, you're welcome to stay, but I don't think we have too much left.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Oh, and, actually, I did want to say something, and I don't know if I'll say something at the time.
Too late now.
No, I actually meant to say it when we were involved, but, first of all, we'll reorganize in April. So whether I'm chair or somebody else
May.
is chair relative to, pardon me? May. But after the town election, we'll be reorganizing. So I know that Mr. Jermaine was referring to me, but it'll be whoever is chair would get the extra amount, and the rest of us. I'm just a little uncomfortable. I'll have to do some thinking about it, as with, the types of struggles we're talking about here, about accepting those additional funds. And we can talk about this as town meeting approaches, but I certainly appreciate the intent of the FinCom. I don't know that this is the time, I wouldn't describe us as flush, and although it's not huge money, I think we can, we can discuss it, and if prior going into town meeting, we decide that we want to just maintain our
So,
stipends
Mr.
where
Chairman,
they are.
there
Yes.
are some other committees that have chosen not to accept their stipend, but we usually leave that on an individual basis. And that was done with the governance committee, is that this has been the offer that was done just to, appreciate people for their time and coming out and leaving their families and maybe take their spouse or kids out to dinner. But there are a few people that choose not to accept their stipends, and that's based on an individual basis.
So, so I guess what you're suggesting is that even if it's voted, if we'd said, hey, only pay me this amount instead of the total amount, we'd have that as an option, so, okay. Okay, so we go to the town administrator update, police station and recreation complex update. That's scheduled for 8 o'clock, by the way.
Actually, the town administrator update on the new one is scheduled at 9 o'clock, and it doesn't talk about any.
Do I have an old one
Yeah, it
here?
just says town administrator update.
Oh, I
With
do.
with no mention of the police station or
All
anything
right,
else.
well, forgive me then.
Get a brand-new computer.
We'll go to the Board of Selectmen update. We'll start now with Mr. Robertson, since he's so attentive.
So cocky. Well, I'll be brief. We attended the Friday evening Carver Hills program, and I just want to give great accolades, whatever the word is, to Donna for organizing that. She did an unbelievable job. She had a marvelous motivational speaker there. She had all of the leaders of the town were there in full force, very supportive. She did a grand job. I hope this isn't a one-off program. I absolutely hope it continues on. That's really all I wanted to say was I thought the world of what she did.
Ms. Ewens?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that we inquire of town council whether or not we need an actual warrant article for demolishing the playground, because the town has voted 3 times, one time with Community Preservation Act money, to either build there or renovate there. And it seems to me that should be town meeting's decision, ultimately.
Okay, we will make that inquiry.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunham?
I just want to echo what Mr. Robertson said. That Carver Heels meeting, Donna did an outstanding job. I know the motivational speaker got me thinking about some things. I wish I'd heard him about a month earlier. And for those who were there, you
That's
know what I'm
funny.
talking about. Those that weren't there, well, that's.
There is
you-
the
you
first
like it.
half of it on YouTube, just for anybody that wants to find it.
Oh, is it? Okay. But again, it was just a tremendous job, and that's like Dave, and I'm sure Mark's going to say the same thing. I really hope this is a continuing effort, and that the next time more people will show up, and we'll get more and more people involved as we go along.
Mr. Townsend?
Absolutely, just not to be redundant, but what Dave and Alan said, Donna Ferrand and her whole group did a wonderful job, and I've heard wonderful feedback from the folks in town, and I really hope it becomes a regular event. And just again, my monthly office hours are next Tuesday in the room next door. Last month I had a line outside the door, so in fact I had to stay an extra 45 minutes. So we'll see what it turns out to this month. But 5 to 6 on March 26th, right next door. So see you then.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, I did win one of the door prizes, and as much as I tried to give it away, they've decided that it'll be good therapy for me to bring into a Board of Selectmen meeting and just utilize it here.
What was that gift? What was that?
It was a coloring book with some really neat colored crayons.
There's just so many ways to go with that, and I'm just...
Yes, there is. I want to see which ones you choose.
Gonna leave that alone. I'm only gonna say that, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the other evening, but I do know from talking to Donna that a big part of her focus was to try to get the responsible use of social media. To remember that, we're all citizens, we all have friends and family, and nobody wants to see people just, ripped a new one out there. No one wants to have their friends and family exposed to, some of the vitriol that's there. And so all we're asking is that it's fine to be critical. It's your absolute constitutional right, if you disagree with somebody, to take them to task, but don't make it personal. You know, unfortunately, today, it's like, if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. It's perfectly fine. We on the board do it all the time, where we may disagree on a subject, but it doesn't mean we have to find each other disagreeable as a consequence. So, and I think also, if we don't see some changes in social media and behavior, I see a lot of people that might want to step forward and be on a board or a committee or run for an elected office that are going to think really 2 and 3 times before exposing themselves to what goes on out there. So I really would just ask for just, you know, civility. And I know that's what Donna was looking for when she came with the idea of putting that together. All right. Next item on the agenda was whether or not this board wants to support the 100% Renewable Energy Act. It's an act that I believe over 100 and some odd legislators have already signed on to. The gist of it is that we spend billions of dollars every year importing oil and gas from out of state. What this would do, the 100% Renewable Energy Act, would power Massachusetts with 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and transition heating and transportation to 100% renewable energy by 2045. So I would ask the board what their pleasure is on registering support. It doesn't bind us to anything other than just a measure of support for the act.
For the purpose of discussion only, I move we support the 100% Renewable Energy Act.
Does someone want to second that for purposes of discussion?
Second.
All right, discussion.
Yeah.
Well, when I first saw this, my first thought was, when did the congresswoman from New York become a legislator in the state of Massachusetts? Because all this is the Green Deal. And it's going to...
In your opinion?
In my opinion. And basically, it's going to be a lot of mandated stuff. There's no mention in this whole thing of how the hell we're going to pay for it, how the residents and citizens are going to have to pay for it to go now to an electric car, to go ahead and redo their homes and everything else. Bad idea. Forget it.
Mr. Townsend?
I did call Representative Gifford's office about this, and I also looked up the bill online. It's a long, complicated bill. Susan tells me there has been no public hearing on it yet. There also has been no cost estimate done. So my recommendation is that we wait on this until we get some more information, and perhaps even ask Susan to come in and speak to us about it after the legislature has moved a little farther on it. Because I just don't think we know. It's a long, complicated bill. If you haven't already, I urge you to look it up online. There's a lot to it.
I have, thank you. Mr. Robertson?
I beg your pardon.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
If she speaks, then you don't.
No, I'll keep it short. I also recommend that people look at it, and I know there was a lot of stuff on social media about this bill, claiming that, you know, it would require all of us to put solar panels on our roofs. That's not what the bill does. It requires the Department of Public Utilities, the DPU, to require the energy companies to go to 100% sustainable energy, and that's the requirement. I mean, right now, their requirement, I believe, is at 3%. I could be a little off. So and they're asking for it by the year 2050, which actually may be too late, in my opinion. So this is not a restrictive that you and I will have to run out there and use our savings account to put panels on our roofs. This is speaking pretty strictly about the legislature requiring utilities to get up to speed here. And I think if we're going to have our state rep here, we should also have our state senator, since he's the main sponsor of this bill.
Mr. Robertson?
I can speak now. I'm, as it's been presented to me and as I've read it, I'm dead set against this proposal. I don't like the idea that things are mandated. I like capital world to work. If some can't compete, once you start mandating something, costs rise. And you're mandated by our very dependable and reliable government. I even get twice as nervous about that. So, I am just, until I see something that makes me think that this is good for our town, good for our city, our nation, I'm just dead set against this whole process.
Now, true, by 2050, I kind of doubt, at least, I don't know about the rest of you, good chances I may not be around for that, so. I'm looking towards my children and grandchildren and their grandchildren.
Well, they will be around.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to respond, Alan. There's so many ways I could do on that. But what I will say is that actually, I'm thinking of my children and grandchildren and the fact that they deserve to live in a world that isn't polluted, that has renewable sources of energy, that, and as time goes by, the technology is solving the problems with renewable energy, and I can't even imagine by 2035 the type of breakthroughs that we're going to have, and I have faith in the technology that's going to be able to do it. So I just think that I understand I'm probably going to lose some of my Republican bona fides as a result of supporting this, but
Not really, Ron, because this is creating jobs too, don't
No,
forget.
I understand,
I mean,
and
it's
it also, I think, is going to save a lot of money from the billions that we're currently spending importing. And I'm not even going to get involved with the political mess we get in when we start trying to work with countries that are generating some of these fossil fuels. So I'm going to stay away from that. I'm not going to get into the whole Middle East issue.
I didn't go there.
All right, so.
And all this is in your opinion and your theory.
That's correct.
Back on topic?
Yeah, if I could just, I don't think this is a Republican-Democrat issue. I just don't think we have enough information on the bill. Like, there's been no public hearing, and there's been no cost estimate done. And I would like to see those before we vote on the bill.
And I just personally don't feel we really should be waiting for that because, in my opinion, I think getting to 100% renewable energy is one of the most important things we can do and support. So, all that being said, I'm gonna, if I needed to, I could wager how this vote's gonna go. So.
And I wouldn't take you up on that.
All those in favor of expressing the town of Carver's support, or this Board of Selectmen's support to the state about the 100% Renewable Energy Act, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No.
It is defeated 3-2. Okay, we'll move to minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chairman. I don't believe anything's there other than the minutes of March 5th. What is the pleasure of the board?
That was the last meeting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good, I wasn't there.
It looks good. I make a
You
motion
weren't
that
there
we-
either, were you?
I watched.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion, those in favor say aye, those opposed, the ayes have it. Our next meetings will be on April 2nd and April 16th. Annual town meeting will be on April 22nd, and then we'll meet twice in the month of May, twice in the month of June, also in July, and so on. If there's no other action to come before the board, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, further discussion, those in favor say aye, those opposed, the ayes have it.